Chapter 805. As the Chaos spiritual root, the Tree of World could continuously draw power from the endless dimensions and the chaos outside the realm to provide for the elemental world. This was the foundation of the elemental world. Only by destroying the Tree of World could the elemental world be seriously damaged. Feng Zichen was very fast. He arrived next to the Tree of World in an instant. At first glance, there was nothing unusual in this world. The Tree of World was still standing there as if it had existed since ancient times, emitting rumbling Dao light. However, upon closer inspection, Feng Zichen had deliberately opened up the lawless realm with Hongmeng Daozhong in order to protect the Tree of World. At this moment, the area had shrunk by more than half. Looking around, Feng Zichen did not find any trace of the Chaos Demon Celestial. However, he knew that the Chaos Demon Celestial must be nearby. The lawless realm would not shrink for no reason. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen suddenly shouted to the void, "Fellow Taoist, I'm already here. Why don't you show yourself?" After waiting for a while, the void in front of him shook and the Chaos Demon Celestial walked out. Seeing this, Feng Zichen's pupils shrank. This was because there was not one Chaos Demon Celestial, but two. Moreover, each of the two Chaos Demon Celestials was extremely powerful. Their auras spread out, affecting the operation of the surrounding heaven and earth laws and causing time to stop. Powerful. Ridiculously powerful. The strength of the two Chaos Demon Celestials was at the seventh heaven of the late-stage primordial chaos realm. In other words, any one of them was stronger than Feng Zichen. At this moment, Feng Zichen's North Star clone was only at the fourth heaven of the primordial chaos realm. His original body, Great Emperor Ziwei, was only at the sixth heaven of the primordial chaos realm and was close to the seventh heaven. These two Chaos Demon Celestials were indeed ridiculously powerful. Fortunately, the sharp-eyed Feng Zichen discovered that they did not carry any Dharma treasures. In this way, the strength of the two would inevitably be affected. Having Dharma treasures and not having them were two completely different concepts. Even for someone as strong as Pangu, without the heaven-splitting divine axe in his hand, his strength would drop by a level. Fellow Taoist, even if you're here, what's the use? Don't tell me that you can take on both of us at the same time? One of the two particularly handsome figures in the primal chaos slowly stepped forward and said. Indeed, Feng Zichen couldn't even defeat one Chaos Demon God, let alone two. If the two Chaos Demon Gods joined hands, not only would Feng Zichen not be able to protect the World Tree, but he might also be killed by the Chaos Demon Gods. However, who said that Feng Zichen was alone? I'm naturally no match for the two of you, but what if it's 4 against 2? Can those two fellow Taoists still be so confident? Feng Zichen said with a smile as he looked at the Chaos Demon Celestials that were approaching them. What? Hearing that, the two Chaos Demon Celestials were shocked and quickly looked around. It shouldn't be. There were only 10 primordial chaos experts in the entire untainted land, and they were all within their calculations. How could Feng Zichen have other helpers? Just as the two of them were confused, there was a sudden burst of brilliance in the direction of the Heaven Realm. Heavenly Emperor and Longevity Emperor walked out of the Heavenly Court together and walked toward Feng Zichen. A rainbow bridge appeared, with one end standing above the southern heaven gate and the other end extending toward the mortal world and landing beside Feng Zichen. In an instant, the rainbow bridge disappeared, and Heavenly Emperor and South Pole Emperor appeared under the World Tree. They bowed to the two Chaos Demon Celestials and said, Poor Wei and Heavenly Emperor, South Pole, is here to see you. Raising his eyebrows slightly, one of the Chaos Demon Celestials said, We missed out on the two of you. However, even if the two of you have the strength of primordial chaos experts under the support of the power of luck, what's the use? Even if the three of you join forces, you're still no match for us. That was right. Under the support of the power of luck, Heavenly Emperor was at most at the 5th sky of primordial chaos, and South Pole Emperor was even weaker, at the 4th sky of primordial chaos. Even if the three of them joined forces, they were still no match for the 7th sky of primordial chaos experts. However, at this moment, they heard an ethereal voice coming from afar. It quickly drifted over and fell into the ears of the Chaos Demon Celestials. If that's the case, count me in. Everyone looked back and saw a peerless figure walking toward them. Great Emperor Ziwei. Excluding the saints, he was the real #1 person in the untainted land. It's you. Seeing Great Emperor Ziwei walking toward them, the two Chaos Demon Celestials were shocked and angry. How could they not know this ruthless person who often went to the realm sea to hunt Chaos Demon Celestials? His existence was the greatest humiliation to the Chaos Demon Celestials. The two Chaos Demon Celestials didn't care about the Tree of World anymore. They joined forces and attacked Great Emperor Ziwei. With a shake of the Zhouxing painting in his hand, Great Emperor Ziwei fought with the two of them. On the other side, Feng Zichen and the other two also took out their Dharma treasures and joined the battle. As for why Great Emperor Ziwei came here, it was obviously because the three Chaos Demon Celestials in the origin of Earth had been forced out by everyone. Then, Nuwa, Goddess Hutu, and Dong Huangtai each chose a Chaos Demon Celestial and fought with them. Seeing this, Great Emperor Ziwei felt that he was no longer needed here, so he turned and left to help his incarnation. At this moment, the three Pure Ones joined forces to fight against a Chaos Demon Celestial. The two Saints of the West joined forces to fight against a Chaos Demon Celestial. Nuwa, Goddess Hutu, and Dong Huangtai each fought against a Chaos Demon Celestial. Feng Zichen, Great Emperor Ziwei, South Pole Emperor, and Heavenly Emperor joined forces to fight against two Chaos Demon Celestials. At this moment, the experts of the Eldritch World came out together to fight against the 7 Chaos Demon Celestials. The Eldritch World was not calm, and the distant chaos beyond the heavens was not calm either. In the sky, Tao Ancestor Hongjun and Patriarch Yang Mei were facing each other from a distance. Behind them, there were several terrifying figures. Behind Patriarch Yang Mei stood the Chaos Demon Celestials. As for the figure standing behind Tao Ancestor Hongjun, it was somewhat thought-provoking. There were a total of 9 people. In addition to the innate 5-element sacred beasts, there were 4 extremely unfamiliar figures. Although they were unfamiliar, their auras were in the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. These were 4 unfamiliar primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Their strength was not weak, and they had walked very far on the path of primordial chaos. They were at least in the middle stage or even the late stage. Oh, they were not too unfamiliar. If Feng Zichen were here, he would realize that one of the 4 unfamiliar Dao Lords was the one at the bottom of the northern underworld sea. He was the terrifying figure standing behind Patriarch Kuanping, Patriarch Northern Underworld Han Ming. As for the other 3, they were also extraordinary. All of them had a great origin. They were the most ancient innate saints that were formed by the origin of heaven and earth. For example, the figure that was shrouded in darkness was called Daoist Tai Ming. He was an existence that was even more ancient than the Mahakala demon celestial of the demon sect. He was born from the true origin of darkness and was a supreme god that controlled darkness. When they were fighting the chaos demonic god in the primitive world, the most ancient primordial sages of the primitive world, who had stayed away from worldly affairs for a long time, walked out of their own secluded places and stood side by side with Ancestor Hongjun to resist the chaos demonic god. "I didn't expect the few of you to still be alive," Patriarch Yang Mei said emotionally as she looked at the few figures in her memory. "Poor Wei didn't expect you to be the reincarnation of the Chaos Demon Celestial, Daoist Yang Mei. Now, you have chosen to be the enemy of the Eldritch World," Daoist Tai Ming, who was opposite Patriarch Yang Mei, replied. "Ah!" Patriarch Yang Mei sighed heavily and didn't say anything else. Although she had cultivated for a period of time in the Eldritch World, those hundreds of millions of years were just a small splash in her long life. How could it be compared to the endless years of friendship during the Chaos Demon Celestial period? The danger of the chaos outside the Eldritch World was far beyond the imagination of all living beings in the Eldritch World. Even the Chaos Demon Celestials couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't encounter danger. Therefore, many Chaos Demon Celestials would support each other and pursue the Great Tao together. Such a friendship wasn't that easy to give up. Since Patriarch Yang Mei didn't say anything, Tao Ancestor Hongjun and the others didn't say anything either. They just remained silent and looked at each other while waiting for the outcome of the Eldritch World. If the Chaos Demon Celestials won, the Chaos Demon Celestials outside the sky canopy would enter the Eldritch World. If the Eldritch World won, the Chaos Demon Celestials outside the sky canopy would leave. Therefore, it could be said that the victory of Feng Zichen and the others was extremely important because it concerned the future of the Eldritch World. Although they didn't know the significance of this battle, everyone knew that this battle couldn't be dragged on and had to end it quickly. Otherwise, if the battle dragged on, the destructive power would become greater and greater, and it wouldn't be as simple as collapsing the Eldritch World. In the end, the Eldritch World might collapse as a whole, and even the origin of the Earth would be affected. Then, everyone would have sinned greatly. Moreover, judging from the current situation, if the battle continued, it wouldn't be long before it affected the heaven realm. Haha, everyone didn't want to make up for the heaven realm again. Therefore, it was better for this battle to end as soon as possible. In their hearts, they wanted to end the battle quickly, so they no longer held back. Each of them used their own trump cards to trick others. Ha! Tai suddenly spat out a drop of essence blood and sprayed it on the bell of chaos. Clang! In the next moment, a bell that resounded throughout the eldritch world rang. The grand bell wave spread out and froze the entire heaven and earth, causing everything to fall into a momentary standstill. When everything returned to normal, the body of the Chaos Demon Celestial who was fighting with Donghuang Tai suddenly shattered and turned into a rain of blood. Whoosh! A ray of Chaos Divine Light flashed. Just as the Chaos Demon Celestial was about to recover his body, Donghuang Tai had already attacked with the Bell of Chaos. With a boom, the Bell of Chaos in Tai's hand suddenly distorted concepts and cognition, becoming infinitely large. Tai raised the Bell of Chaos and covered the broken body of the Chaos Demon Celestial with the bottom of the bell facing down, keeping him in the Bell of Chaos. At the same time, Tai spat out another drop of essence blood and added it to the Bell of Chaos. He fully activated its power to suppress the world of Hongmeng, reverse the space-time power of the heavens, evolve the mysteries of the heavenly Tao, and refine the earth, water, fire, and wind. Rumble! The Bell of Chaos vibrated, and the earth, fire, water, and wind inside surged together, constantly being destroyed and reborn. The power of suppression suppressed the flesh and blood of the Chaos Demon Celestial. The power of twisting space-time delayed the time of the Chaos Demon Celestial by countless times. The power of evolution changed the form of the Chaos Demon Celestial, preventing him from reforming his body. The power of refinement was constantly refining the origin of the Chaos Demon Celestial's flesh and blood, completing the final killing blow. After sealing the Chaos Demon Celestial in the Bell of Chaos, Donghuang Tai suddenly shouted, "Where are the 10 great demon celestials?" As soon as his voice fell, a vast world suddenly emerged from the void, floating above the eldritch wilderness. The 10 great demon celestials walked out of the world at the same time, bowing to Donghuang Tai. "Your subjects are here. Your Majesty, please give us your orders." Donghuang Tai clenched his teeth and spat a mouthful of essence blood at the Bell of Chaos. Instantly, the power of the Bell of Chaos skyrocketed again. Donghuang Tai grabbed the Bell of Chaos and threw it toward the shattered eldritch wilderness. Rumble! As soon as the Bell of Chaos landed, an unparalleled power burst forth, freezing part of the eldritch wilderness fragments and slowly fusing them. After doing all this, Donghuang Tai turned to the 10 great demon celestials and ordered, "Break this world, extract its origin, and fuse it with the eldritch wilderness fragment. Rebuild the home of the demon race." "Yes, Your Majesty." Hearing this, the 10 great demon celestials quickly gathered the demon soldiers and formed a realm-refining formation. They slowly refined the top-level Greater Thousand World that had accompanied the demon race for countless years and fused it with the eldritch wilderness fragment under their feet. With the help of the Greater Thousand World's origin, the eldritch wilderness fragment gradually stabilized. At the same time, the Bell of Chaos trembled continuously. Strands of the Chaos Demon Celestial's origin flowed out of it and fused with the land. Gradually, the land became more and more stable and bigger. Its vitality was also slowly recovering, and its origin was also constantly strengthening. He believed that when the land was completely regenerated, the innate spiritual chi contained in it would not be any less than that of the ancient times. After all, in order to create this land, Donghuang Tai refined a Chaos Demon Celestial. While Donghuang Tai was suppressing the Chaos Demon Celestial, on the other side, Goddess Hutu also erupted. She formed seals with her hands and released an unknown power. In the deepest part of the nether realm, the slowly rotating 6 paths of reincarnation disk seemed to have felt the power and suddenly shook. Then, a corner of the 6 paths of reincarnation disk appeared quietly and smashed the head of the Chaos Demon Celestial who was fighting with Goddess Hutu. The 6 paths of reincarnation disk was the only chaos treasure in the eldritch wilderness. Its power was unimaginable even if it was just a corner of it. After being hit by the 6 paths of reincarnation disk, the Chaos Demon Celestial could not help but let out a miserable cry. He lost his mind and fell down, smashing hard into the eldritch wilderness. Suppress! At the same time, the wizard race expert who had been prepared for a long time suddenly appeared. He activated the divine palaces of the 12 ancestors of sorcery, and formed the 12 deities killing formation to suppress the chaos demon celestial who had fallen on the ground. Chapter 806. Rumble. The 12 heavenly fiends formation was formed. Panga's shadow loomed and suppressed the chaos fiend god deep in the ground, making him unable to move. At the same time, the shadow of the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared and fell into the ground. It enveloped the chaos fiend god and slowly rotated. Rumble. Every time the 6 paths of reincarnation rotated, the chaos fiend god weakened a little. Part of the origin power was refined and integrated into the ground that suppressed him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The 12 ancestral sorcerer temples glowed and vibrated. They gathered the surrounding fragments of the primitive land and formed a continent vaster than the land of the demon race. After goddess Hutu, it was Nuwa's turn. She changed her usual weak appearance and turned into a huge born Taoism aptitude with a human head and a snake body. She activated the power of the cauldron of heaven and earth with all her strength and kept smashing the chaos fiend god that she was fighting. The cauldron of heaven and earth was named after the universe, so its weight was obvious. Its full power was as if the primitive land was smashing down. Its power was simply terrifying. The chaos fiend god was smashed a few times by Nuwa with the cauldron of heaven and earth. Although his physical body did not suffer much damage, his head was already a little dizzy. At a certain moment, the chaos fiend god lost his balance and fell into the broken primitive land. Seeing this, goddess Nuwa's mind stirred. She coiled her snake body around the cauldron of heaven and earth and smashed the chaos demonic celestial with it. She pressed the chaos demonic celestial on his body and firmly suppressed him under the broken earth. At the same time, Fuxi, Shenong, and Shenyuan, the 3 human emperors, who had been prepared for this, revived the 365 divine cities of the human race at the same time. They formed the cosmic light formation, condensed the shadow of the god of Pangu, and refined the chaos fiend god. Rumble. As Panga's shadow took shape, the surrounding fragments of the primitive land gathered toward the human race's divine cities as if they were summoned. Soon, a vast land began to take shape. In another place, the 3 pure ones worked together and easily suppressed the chaos fiend god. It was also because that chaos fiend god was unlucky to have chosen the 3 pure ones as his opponents. He was only at the 6th firmament of primordial chaos. Even if the chaos fiend god's combat strength was heaven-defying, he could fight with an 8th firmament expert. However, when the 3 pure ones joined forces, their battle prowess was close to that of Wuji Daluo Jingxian. He could even fight experts at such a realm, let alone a chaos fiend celestial who was only at the 6th firmament of primordial chaos. Once the 3 purities unleashed their full strength, they would be able to easily suppress them. Rumble. The immortal slaying sword formation and Panga's banner vibrated at the same time. An earth-shattering murderous aura and majestic chaotic sword chi erupted at the same time, sweeping toward the chaos fiend celestial that they were fighting. Even though the chaos demon celestial used all his means to defend himself, he still couldn't defend against the attacks of the 2 supreme treasures. In the blink of an eye, his body, which was comparable to a primordial treasure, was torn apart by the chaotic sword chi. Then, it was shredded into pieces by the immortal slaying sword beam. In the end, the Tai Chi art rose and collected the chaos demon god's flesh and blood. With a slight stir, the innate yin and yang energy surged and injured the chaos demon god once again. Kunlun Mountain, Shouyang Mountain, Golden Turtle Island, come. After severely injuring the chaos demon god, the 3 pure ones summoned their own dojos and arranged themselves according to the positions of the primordial 3 talents, suppressing the chaos demon god's flesh and blood. Rumble. As the 3 sage dojos landed, the surrounding primeval land fragments immediately sensed it and gathered towards this place. Soon, another vast continent slowly took shape. After the 3 pure ones, it was the 2 saints of the west. These 2 saints were quite interesting. They knew that they didn't have powerful primordial treasures or powerful strength to help them. Therefore, when they fought the chaos demon god, there was no prelude at all. As soon as they attacked, they used their full strength and directly revealed their true forms, fighting fiercely with the chaos demon god. For other primordial chaos experts, this might not be a good idea, but for saints, it was the best way. Because in the primitive world, saints wouldn't be injured at all, and their dermic powers were endless. They could even kill the chaos demon god by force. The primordial Bodhi tree swayed and swung its branches at the chaos demon god. At the same time, the light of wisdom flickered on the branches, constantly weakening the Chaos Demon God's mind power. At the same time, Saint Jianghu also attacked. His mind power surged out and constantly shook the Chaos Demon God's mind, trying to pull him into the Nirvana realm. In the face of the Chaos Demon God's attacks, the two saints of the West didn't dodge and let the attacks hit their bodies. Anyway, they wouldn't die, so they could fight however they wanted. After the two sides exchanged hundreds of blows, the two saints of the West were covered in blood, but their aura didn't drop at all. On the other hand, the Chaos Demon God didn't have any blood on his body, but his aura was getting weaker and weaker. At a certain moment, the Chaos Demon God suddenly stopped breathing, and the hand that was attacking the two saints of the West also dropped powerlessly. Under the crazy attacks of the two saints of the West, the Chaos Demon God finally lost his mind and was pulled into the Nirvana realm by Saint Jianghu, sinking continuously. Mount Meru, come! Summoning Mount Meru, the two saints suppressed the Chaos Demon God at the foot of the mountain. Then, without hesitation, they transformed into their true forms and went forward. The branches and roots wrapped tightly around the Chaos Demon God, constantly extracting his power and pouring it into Mount Meru. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Mount Meru trembled and released a great amount of light. It released a vast and mighty power, drawing in the surrounding fragments of the great wastelands, forming a vast expanse of earth. At this point, the 5 Chaos Demon Gods on the ground were all suppressed, and the shattered primitive land was slowly recovering, gradually evolving into 5 huge provinces. The 4 great forces of earth, fire, and water that were released due to the shattering of the primitive land were slowly transformed into new lands with the formation of the 5 great divine lands, which were constantly growing stronger. The 5 great divine lands didn't have a name for the time being, and they weren't fully formed yet. They were constantly integrating the remaining fragments of the primitive land to strengthen themselves. At the same time, as the suppressed 5 Chaos Demon Gods were constantly refined, their origins were integrated into the 5 great divine lands, making them more and more mysterious. The world was no longer filled with the filthy acquired qi, but with the connate qi that emitted the will of the birth of all things. When the heavenly Tao returned to the primitive land and the connate Tao descended again, the primitive land would be no different from the antiquity times, except that it would be a little smaller. It was even comparable to the cultivation environment of the primordial age, which was mentioned in the legends. There were a total of 7 Chaos Demon Gods. 5 of them on the ground had been suppressed, and the remaining 2 Chaos Demon Gods were about to be suppressed. Fengzichen and the other 3 gods suddenly joined forces and evolved the real Celestial Emperor Dharma form, whose strength was almost on par with the Wuji Daluo Jingxian. Suppress! The Celestial Emperor Dharma form didn't waste any time. It grabbed the 33 heavens and used the whole heaven realm as a weapon to suppress one of the Chaos Demon Gods. The power of the heaven realm was so vast that it was countless times more powerful than a connate cardinal treasure. Yet, the Celestial Emperor Dharma form held it and used it as a weapon. The mighty power spread. Not to mention the 2 Chaos Demon Gods in front of it. Even the 3 pure ones who were watching the battle from afar couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. It was too ferocious. No, it was too powerful. Using the heaven realm as a weapon, perhaps no magic treasure in the primitive land could match its power. Unless the restriction of the connate cardinal treasure was lifted, it would be inferior to the heaven realm. Not even the nether realm, which was said to be on the same level as the heaven realm. The heaven realm was the center of the primitive land and was favored by the heavenly Tao. Even though the nether realm was suppressed by the 6 paths of reincarnation disc, it was still weaker than the heaven realm. After all, the heavenly Tao was the most powerful in the primitive land. What was the meaning of pushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood? The Celestial Emperor Dharma form took action. Under the suppression of the heaven realm, the 33 heavens shook. Endless rules hung down, and the connate qi was vast and mighty. It directly fixed the Chaos Demon God on the spot, unable to move at all. Bang! Before the heaven realm smashed on the Chaos Demon God, he couldn't bear the pressure and exploded. Pieces of flesh and blood flew everywhere, dyeing a large area of the sky red. Then, the heaven realm shook, and the 33 layers of Celestial Emperor Pagoda appeared. It took away the flesh and blood of the Chaos Demon God and brought it to the origin of the heaven realm to be suppressed. In the next moment, the heaven realm was restored. A powerful force of backlash broke out, and the Celestial Emperor Dharma form disintegrated. Fengzichen and the other 3 reappeared. As the center of the primitive land, how could the heaven realm be so easy to deal with? Once it wavered, it would face the backlash of the entire primitive land. That was to say, The celestial emperor Dharma form formed by the four of them was the top comic rank in the primitive land. Otherwise, the backlash just now wouldn't be as simple as breaking the celestial emperor Dharma form. It would at least take away half of their lives. The moment the celestial emperor disintegrated, the only two primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, Feng Zichen, and Great Emperor Ziwei among the four primordial chaos gods reacted extremely quickly. One of them activated the supreme formation, the chaos formation, while the other activated the supreme formation, the galaxy of cosmic light formation. At the same time, they blasted toward the remaining chaos demon god. Whoosh, Pangu moved. He punched out, and a power comparable to Daluo Jinxian's erupted, directly shattering the chaos demon god. Of course, others couldn't see Pangu. Therefore, when the scene fell into the eyes of the crowd, it was as if a galaxy had fallen and directly blasted the chaos demon god. This scene made the eyelids of the onlookers twitch. Since when did the boundless starry sky become so powerful? Rumble. The moment the chaos demon god's body shattered, the imperial court of human Tao reappeared. A chaotic divine light swept down, sweeping away the chaos demon god's flesh and blood, suppressing it in the chaos formation. At this point, the 7 chaos demon gods that attacked the Eldritch world were all suppressed by the crowd and became resources for the Eldritch world's advancement. Brothers, I'll take my leave first. After bidding farewell to Hao Tian and the others, Feng Zichen hurriedly left for the continent where the human race was located. Among the 6 forces, the other 5 forces each suppressed a chaos demon god. Only the human race suppressed 2 chaos demon gods with their own strength. This was a good thing, but at the same time it was also a bad thing. If there was a problem with the seal of the 2 chaos demon gods, the human race would be in big trouble. Feng Zichen's departure was to completely eliminate this future trouble. Feng Zichen had urgent matters to attend to, and so did Emperor Hao Tian and the others. There was also a chaos demon god suppressed in the heaven realm. They also had to go and watch, in case the chaos demon god caused trouble and disrupted the order of the heaven realm. In fact, Feng Zichen did not have any good ideas. He just kept attacking the chaos demon god and refining his power of origin, making him weaker and weaker until he completely died. At the same time, he was also doing his best to strengthen the seal and cut off the possibility of the chaos demon god breaking the seal. Suddenly, Feng Zichen thought of something and could not help but smile. Now, in order to suppress the chaos demon god, everyone had used their trump cards. What did this mean? It meant that the Eldritch world would fall into a period of peace that had not been seen for a long time. If there was no urgent matter, no one would easily start a war. Everyone's strongest forces were suppressing the chaos demon god. If they rashly started a war and caused problems with the seal, what would they do if the chaos demon god escaped? Then they would have no place to cry. Because of this, unless there was no other choice, no one would start a war. The price was too high for them to bear. After returning to the ancestral land of the human clan, Feng Zichen and Nuwa greeted each other and began to size up the current situation of the human clan. Compared to before, the ancestral land of the human clan had not changed much. After all, with the protection of the divine cycle city, even if the attack of a sage was very strong, it would be difficult to destroy this place. The ancestral land of the human clan had not changed, but the territory of the human clan had changed a lot. The trend of the earth veins was completely different from before. It no longer belonged to the lineage of Pangu, nor was it like the lineage of the chaos demon god. The two sides merged and became specious. This would not do. It had to be changed. He was the legitimate lineage of Pangu. Everything in the human clan naturally belonged to the lineage of Pangu. Moreover, in this world created by Pangu, if one did not follow the pattern of Pangu, what right did one have to receive the favor of Providence? With an idea in mind, Feng Zichen continued to look at the continent that belonged to the human clan. He discovered that it was much larger than the human clan's territory in the past. It was about 1/3 the size of the Eldritch Wilderness and was still expanding. After the Eldritch Wilderness was shattered and restored, its surface area did not decrease. Instead, it became larger. This was a good thing. It meant that the origin of the Eldritch Wilderness had not been damaged. Instead, it had strengthened a lot. After looking at the human clan, Feng Zichen looked at the other 4 divine lands and discovered that they were similar to the human clan. There was not much difference. This would not do. After paying so much, wouldn't it be a loss for the human clan to be the same as the others? As the protagonist of the world, the human clan naturally had to be different from the others. They had to be more outstanding. With the divine cycle city and the suppressed chaos demon god, the human clan would definitely be able to surpass the others as time passed. However, P.S. Today, I moved books for my younger sister. 6th floor. There was no elevator. I went up and down several times. Dozens of pounds of books. I'm exhausted. Not only did I have to go up and down the building, but I also had to move them to the school gate. For the first time, I discovered that a big school was not a good thing. The exhausted me begged for monthly votes. Chapter 807. Feng Zichen wanted the present, not the future. Now, he wanted the divine land of the human clan to surpass the other 4 continents. The future was full of too many uncertainties. Just like Feng Zichen, in order to plan the apotheosized tribulation, how many plans did he make that he thought were perfect? But in the end, all kinds of problems still occurred. No one could say for sure what would happen in the future. Grasping the present was the most important thing. Therefore, Feng Zichen now wanted the divine land of the human clan to be different from the other 4 continents. Feng Zichen did this not because of personal feelings, but because he had a great plan for the welfare of the human clan. Now that the untainted land had been shattered and turned into 5 more powerful divine lands, this was a good thing. But everything had a priority. No matter how extraordinary the 5 divine lands were, they had to be differentiated into good and bad. When the way of heaven returned, the good divine land would definitely receive more attention from the way of heaven and gain the favor of most of the way of heaven. In this way, this divine land that was favored by the way of heaven would far surpass the other 4 continents in terms of development and heritage. Just like before the untainted land was shattered, the East was the orthodox untainted land. The way of heaven also focused on the East. As a result, everything here, whether it was the concentration of spiritual qi, the number of magic treasures, or the number of heavenly talents, was far more than that of the West. In short, to describe it in one sentence, the East was raised by the biological mother, while the West was raised by the stepmother. The gap was so big that people could not bear to look at it directly. Now, the reason why Feng Zichen wanted the divine land of the human clan to be different and outstanding, to become the leader of the 5 continents. His purpose was to wait for the way of heaven to return and fight for the orthodox position, so as to gain more favor from the way of heaven. At this time, Feng Zichen was not the only one who thought of this. The rest of the people probably thought the same and wanted to fight for the orthodox position of the way of heaven and earth. For this, the rest of the people must have prepared all kinds of means, but how could their means be compared with Feng Zichen's? With a thought, Feng Zichen's divine sense burst out, traversing boundless space and arrived at the location of the miniature desolate world. Then, without seeing him do anything, the primordial star tree that stood in the mini-untainted world like a heavenly pillar suddenly disappeared. The 10,000 realms trading city, which was far away in the infinite space-time, suddenly shook. A divine tree that covered the sky silently appeared and took root in the center of the city. As the huge tree crown stretched out, it forcibly opened the void of the 10,000 realms trading city. At the same time, millions and millions of stars appeared, shining brilliantly as they hung in the sky. They were incomparably dazzling as they poured down endless starlight. Without a doubt, this tree was the innate star tree. Feng Zichen had moved it from the innate star tree to the myriad realms trading city to serve as the city's support and accelerate its growth. Rumble. After sending away the innate star tree, Feng Zichen sent all the existences above the golden immortal level in the mini-untainted world into the myriad realms trading city. Then, he exerted his supreme power to move the mini-untainted world, pulling it out from the seal of the demon clan and out of the untainted time and space. It constantly approached the untainted world. Rumble. In the sky above the continent of the human clan, a vast expanse of the void suddenly shattered, revealing a corner of a supreme world. It was the mini-untainted world. Under the pull of Feng Zichen, the mini-untainted world returned to the untainted world after countless years. Rumble. 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 Heaven and earth kept shaking. In the sky above the territory of the human clan, more and more of the mini-untainted world was revealed. Soon, the mini-untainted world, which was hundreds of times larger than the ordinary greater thousand realms, completely returned to the untainted world, quietly lying in the sky above the divine land of the human clan. The mini-untainted world was very big, but it was still many times smaller than the newly born divine land of the human clan. This world has such a familiar aura. Is this the former sacred land of the human clan, Zichen's paradise? I didn't expect that after being sealed by the demon clan for countless years, not only did it not decline, it became even more prosperous. I don't know if I should say that the demon clan's means are not good, or that the human emperor's means are heaven-defying. Even this did not shake the foundation of the human clan, but made them even stronger. Some people recognized the origin of the mini-untainted world. It was the former sacred land of the human clan, Xichen's paradise. They could not help but sigh as they recalled the past. In the end, the demon emperor's skills were inferior. The seal that was set in the past to cut off the human clan's inheritance did not have the desired effect. Instead, it created a vast world for the human clan, increasing their strength. Dong Huang Tai would probably feel uncomfortable when he saw this scene. That was indeed the case. Even though he had already expected this, Dong Huang Tai's face still turned ugly when he saw the mini-untainted world. In particular, when he saw that there were many powerful human clan cultivators living in the mini-untainted world, his face turned even uglier. If Dong Huang Tai had known this would happen, he would not have had so many scruples. He would have done his best to slaughter the human clan instead of choosing to seal them. Why does this world look so familiar to the poor Wei? It's like the untainted land? It's not the untainted land of today, but the untainted land of the primordial age that was not affected by the calamity and was not broken. The terrain of this world is exactly the same as the untainted land of the primordial age. Some people found the mini-untainted world more and more familiar. In the end, they seemed to remember something and suddenly shouted, revealing the origin of the mini-untainted world. At this moment, the three pure ones and the other primordial chaos experts also noticed this. Then they frowned deeply. Their cultivation levels were higher and they knew more. Therefore, when they saw that the mini-untainted world was extremely similar to the untainted land, they suddenly had a bad feeling. Was Feng Zichen trying to use this world to fight for the untainted land's orthodoxy? Then, Feng Zichen's actions confirmed everyone's guess. He gritted his teeth and suddenly took out the origin of the mini-untainted world and merged it with the origin of the god world. Rumble! After losing the origin of the world, the mini-untainted world quickly came to an end. It began to disintegrate and collapse at an unimaginable speed. The sky cracked and turned into countless fragments, falling down together with the stars in the sky. The earth also disintegrated and collapsed, turning into pieces of debris and heading towards destruction. However, before the mini-untainted world was completely destroyed, Feng Zichen had already made his move. Rumble! Vast power gushed out from his body, giving birth to endless runes and turning into a huge furnace of the Great Path. It absorbed the disintegrating mini-untainted world and began to refine it crazily. The flames of the way burned fiercely and the furnace shook. The mini-untainted world was quickly refined and turned into the purest power that flowed into the god world, accelerating the fusion of the origin of the two worlds. After absorbing the origin of the mini-untainted world, the shape of the god world gradually changed, transforming into the shape of the mini-untainted world. The god world and the divine prefecture of the human race were originally two separate entities. When the god world changed, the divine prefecture of the human race was affected and began to adjust spontaneously, becoming similar to the god world. Rumble! In the divine prefecture of the human race, the 365 divine cities shook together, resonating with God Pengu. They each derived a corresponding spirit chi node to accelerate the transformation of the divine prefecture of the human race. According to Feng Zichen's idea, as long as he transformed the structure of the divine prefecture of the human race into the real untainted land, then when the way of the heavens returned and saw the untainted land of the past, it would definitely favor this place more. In terms of orthodoxy, what else could be compared to the untainted land? If this was not orthodoxy, then what else could be called orthodoxy? If Feng Zichen really succeeded, the way of the heavens would have no choice. Even if he did not intend to position the divine prefecture of the human race as the main body of the untainted land, the way of the heavens and the endless fate would spontaneously gather and transform it into the center of the untainted land. Of course, Feng Zichen could not interfere with the decision of the way of the heavens, but he could create a condition where the way of the heavens had no choice but to choose him. Rumble! When the power of the 365 divine cities of the human race was activated to the limit, the galaxy of universal light array appeared spontaneously. The galaxy surged, the light of the universe flowed, and the space-time in the divine prefecture of the human race suddenly sped up. Like the surging yellow river, it flowed forward rapidly. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. And this speed was still accelerating with the operation of the galaxy of universal light. One look, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. Time passed crazily, and the changes in the divine prefecture of the human race also sped up, almost to the point where it was visible to the naked eye, as if a pair of supreme giant hands were making it. In just a few breaths, the divine prefecture of the human race already had some embryonic form of the untainted land. In the distance, the three pure ones, the Eastern Emperor Tai, and the two sages of the West saw this scene and could not help but frown. If they let Fengzichen continue to evolve like this, they would not need to fight for the title of orthodoxy in the untainted land. Basically, it was equivalent to giving it to the human race. Thinking of this, they were naturally unhappy. The orthodoxy of the heaven and earth represented not only a title, but also endless benefits. Who would not want to get benefits? Moreover, if they could not get it, they could not let outsiders get it, especially not the human race. With the current strength of the human race, it was already faintly beyond their control. If they let it take away the title of the orthodoxy of the heaven and earth and continue to develop and grow stronger, then in the untainted land, who could balance the human race? The human race could not continue to grow stronger. With a decision in mind, the three pure ones, the Eastern Emperor Tai, and the two sages of the West moved at the same time, releasing powerful forces and blasting into the distance. Well, don't get me wrong. They were not attacking Fengzichen, but blasting into the sky, breaking through the barrier between heaven and earth, and speeding up the return of the way of heaven. At present, although the divine prefecture of the human race had some embryonic form of the untainted land, it was still a long way from being completely formed. If the way of heaven returned at this time, the incomplete untainted land of the human race of the divine prefecture would have some advantages in front of the way of heaven, but it would not surpass the others by too much, far from the level that was predetermined. Seeing the movements of the six people, Fengzichen obviously guessed their plans, but he could not stop them. He could only do his best to accelerate the evolution of the divine prefecture of the human race. Fortunately, evolving the divine prefecture of the human race into the untainted land was only one of Fengzichen's 3 plans. In addition, he had 2 alternatives as a backup plan. If one plan did not work, then all 3 plans would be used together. Unless the 3 pure ones could rebuild Mount Buzhou, Fengzichen's 3 plans could definitely fix the orthodoxy of the untainted land on the divine prefecture of the human race. Rumble! With a roar of heaven and earth, the way of heaven finally returned from the chaos outside the sky and took over the untainted land again. All of a sudden, the whole world was different, as if it had completely come alive and was full of vitality. But for a master of the origin like Fengzichen, with the return of the way of heaven, they seemed to have an extra line of sight. Their actions were under the surveillance of the way of heaven, which made them feel very uncomfortable. But there was no other way. They were too strong and had the power to destroy the untainted land. How could the way of heaven leave them alone? Naturally, it had to monitor them. The way of heaven descended, and the broken order began to slowly recover. The operation of heaven and earth also gradually returned to normal. Because of the disappearance of the acquired Tao, the congenital Tao also emerged from the origin of heaven and earth and began to take over the world again. But this was not the main point at the moment. The main point was which of the 5 divine continents was the orthodoxy of the untainted land. In a trance, a purple vertical eye appeared between heaven and earth. It lowered its gaze and looked down at the 5 divine prefectures below. That was the eye of heaven punishment, the eye of the way of heaven. The way of heaven's gaze lingered on the 5 divine prefectures for a while. The first thing it eliminated was the continents controlled by the demon race and the Western sect. These 2 factions were really incomparable to Fengzichen, the 3 pure ones, and the Lady of Earth. There was no need to compare the advantages and disadvantages of the continents. They could be eliminated directly from their identities. That was because Fengzichen and the other 3 factions were the Orthodox Pangu, while the demon race and the Western sect were not. The Orthodox of the primordial world naturally had to be chosen from the Orthodox Pangu. Only then would it be legitimate. To be honest, the way of heaven was really hesitating about which to choose. The 3 parties had the same identity and were all Orthodox Pangu. There was no difference between them. Therefore, if their identities could not be compared, they could only compare the advantages and disadvantages of the 3 continents. However, in terms of advantages, the 3 continents were actually not much different. Firstly, Fengzichen had an advantage. The human divine prefecture already had some embryonic form of the primordial world. That was his advantage. Next, it was the advantage of the Lady of Earth. Needless to say, the 12 ancestral Magi temples suppressed the earth and evolved the 12 orthodox meridians of the Pangu. They circulated the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and multiplied endlessly. Finally, it was the advantage of the 3 pure ones. Where is it? At Kunlun Mountain. Before the primordial world shattered, the east was the orthodox of the primordial world. P.S. You didn't expect it, right? I stayed up late to write it. He felt guilty and could not sleep. He got up and began to write. Chapter 808. After the collapse of Mount Buzhou, Mount Kunlun became the #1 divine mountain in the primordial world. At the same time, it was also where the ancestral bloodline of the East was located. It was the orthodox of the orthodox. The 3 pure ones controlled Mount Kunlun, which was equivalent to controlling part of the orthodox lineage. Naturally, they had a great advantage. The heavenly Tao's gaze wandered back and forth. Sometimes, it stopped on the divine land of the human race, sometimes it fell on the divine continent of the 3 pure ones, and sometimes it fell on the divine continent of the witch race. Now, he was very hesitant. He really didn't know what to choose. It was good that the heavenly Tao was hesitating because the longer he hesitated, the greater the advantage of the human race. The human race's divine land was still rapidly evolving into the primordial world. As time passed, the scales of victory would slowly tilt towards the human race. The 3 pure ones obviously noticed this problem. They didn't dare to hesitate at all. After realizing that the heavenly Tao couldn't make a decision immediately, they directly used their authority as saints and began to summon the power of the heavenly Tao. The biggest difference between Fengzichen and the 3 pure ones was that the 3 pure ones were saints and members of the heavenly Tao. However, he was not. When the 3 pure ones released their authority as saints, it was equivalent to saying to the heavenly Tao, "Big brother, look at us. Your lackeys are here." One side was their own, and the other side was an outsider. Wasn't it obvious how the heavenly Tao would choose? Gradually, the power of the heavenly Tao began to shift towards the divine land where the 3 pure ones were. Seeing this, Fengzichen narrowed his eyes and activated his first backup plan. There was a loud rumble. Above the firmament, all the stars in the sky vibrated. Boundless power of the stars poured down, surging toward the divine land where the human race was. At the same time, Zhouxing's position was also changing and gathering in the sky above the divine land of the human race. In particular, the Ziwei star appeared directly above the divine land of the human race. Wisps of imperial purple qi hung down and enveloped the entire divine land of the human race to show that he favored this place. With the support of Zhouxing, the status of the human race's divine land in the primordial world suddenly rose. The power of heaven and earth that was gradually shifting towards the divine land where the 3 pure ones were gradually began to flow back towards the human race's divine land. As for the Lady of Earth, she had never planned to fight with the two sides from the beginning. If the 12 ancestral sorcerers were all present, they could directly summon Pangu's true body. Then, there would be no need to fight for the orthodox battle of the primordial world. They would be the ones directly. Unfortunately, there were only 2 of the 12 ancestral sorcerers left. Their strength was greatly reduced, and they could not compete with the other party. Goddess Hutu was very open-minded. Since she couldn't win, why would she waste her energy to compete? Anyway, he had the netherworld in his hands. Even if he didn't fight for the orthodoxy of heaven and earth, he wouldn't be weaker than any other force. Seeing the power of the heavenly Tao shift, the 3 pure ones immediately panicked. The 3 of them first took out their respective Tao validation treasures, the dragon-headed scepter, the Qingping sword, and the tri-jade Rui scepter. The moment the 3 treasures rose, 3 powerful forces were entangled in the void. They gradually evolved into the aura of the green lotus of creation and spread out between heaven and earth. Sensing the aura of the green lotus of creation, the power of the heavenly Tao paused slightly, and the speed at which it moved towards the divine land of the human race gradually began to slow down. However, the aura of the green lotus of creation was not enough. The speed at which the power of the heavenly Tao was transferred to the divine land of the human race only slowed down but did not stop. Seeing this, the Grand Pure One and the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning looked at each other. Suddenly, they took out the Taiji painting and the Pangu banner. The power of the 2 heavenly Tao treasures spread out. The power of the heavenly Tao seemed to have been attracted by a fatal temptation. It directly abandoned the divine land of the human race and ran towards the divine land where the 3 pure ones were. The heavenly Tao treasures were treasures that had once split open the heavens. If that was not considered the orthodox of the primordial world, what else could be considered the orthodox of the primordial world? The three pure ones had always been high and mighty. Apart from being the orthodox of the Pangu, it was also because they had the heavenly Tao treasures. Look at the Grand Master of Heaven. If he followed the normal trajectory of history, he, who did not have the heavenly Tao treasures, would end up being imprisoned. The great Taoist priest Seal Rise. Although he did not have the heavenly Tao treasures, Feng Zichen had the great Taoist priest seal. It was also a symbol of the orthodoxy of the world. The so-called orthodoxy of the world was nothing more than who had more Pangu seals. Whoever had more would be the orthodox. While activating the great Taoist priest seal, Feng Zichen did not forget to take out the human Tao Emperor's seal. It was a connate treasure made from Pangu's fingerbone. With the two combined, an extremely dense Pangu aura spread out from Feng Zichen's body and spread between heaven and earth. The power of the heavenly Tao paused again. It wandered between heaven and earth, not knowing who to choose. Bell of Chaos rise. In the distance, Dong Huangtai suddenly took out the Bell of Chaos when he saw this scene. He joined forces with the other two heavenly Tao treasures to resist Feng Zichen. Monsters and humans were mortal enemies. In Dong Huangtai's opinion, it would be better for the three pure ones to become the orthodoxy of the primitive world than for humans to become the orthodoxy of the primitive world. Therefore, after a short hesitation, he chose to help the three pure ones. The power of the three heaven-splitting treasures combined was not as simple as 1 plus 2. Instead, it began to skyrocket several times over. One could even vaguely see the shadow of a giant axe looming behind the three heavenly Tao treasures. It emitted ripples that could split heaven and earth. The heaven-splitting divine axe. In an instant, the scales of victory tilted toward the three pure ones again. The power of the heavenly Tao surged toward the divine land where the three pure ones were. Suppress. In the boundless starry sky, great Emperor Ziwei seemed to sense something. He suddenly released his own power that was of the same origin as the heavenly Tao and blessed Feng Zichen. At the same time, seeing that Dong Huangtai had helped the three pure ones, Nuwa, who had a grudge against the monster clan, also took action. She fully activated the power of the 12 ancestral sorcerer temples and condensed the power of Pangu to bless Feng Zichen. In an instant, the scales of victory became stable again. The power of the heavenly Tao that surged toward the divine land where the three pure ones were located slowly retreated. It fell into hesitation again. Damn it, Gauchen, you forced the poor way to do this. In the distance, the three pure ones saw that they had used all their means but still failed to seize the power of the heavenly Tao. They couldn't help but grit their teeth and release the mark of Pangu in their bodies. They planned to condense Pangu's primordial spirit and seize the power of the heavenly Tao by force. It seemed that the three pure ones were really desperate. When they were fighting against the chaos demon god, they didn't use their last resort, which was to summon Pangu's primordial spirit. Unexpectedly, in order to fight for the orthodoxy of the untainted land, they used their last resort. On the other side, in the divine land where the human clan was located, Feng Zichen naturally noticed the three pure ones' actions. He couldn't help but look impatient. "You're so annoying," Feng Zichen shouted impatiently. He made up his mind and directly reached out his hand to grab the Tree of World. He uprooted it and planted it in the center of the divine land of the human clan. There was a loud rumble. The Tree of World fell to the ground. Its endless roots stretched out and directly entwined with the ley lines in the divine land of the human clan. Whoosh! In an instant, the unimaginable power of origin gushed out from the roots of the Tree of World and madly poured into the land where the divine land of the human clan was located. Rumble! Boom! 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 The divine land of the human clan suddenly expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a few breaths, it had more than doubled in size and was still expanding. Before long, the divine land of the human clan had expanded by more than 100 times. Its appearance had completely transformed into that of the untainted land. If someone looked down at the divine land of the human clan at this time, he would find that the divine land of the human clan was almost the same as the untainted land of the primitive age except for its smaller size. It was simply a miniature version of the untainted land. The divine land of the human clan was small compared to the untainted land of the primitive age, not the untainted land of the past. Compared to the untainted land of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the divine land of the human clan was about the same size. When the Tree of World appeared in the divine land of the human clan, the power of the Way of Heaven abandoned the three pure ones without hesitation. It directly appeared above the Tree of World and slowly descended. In the eyes of the Way of Heaven, the Tree of World was even more important than the untainted land. Since it had chosen the divine land of the human clan, there was no need to continue the fight for orthodoxy. What else could it be other than the divine land of the human clan? How is this possible? The Tree of World is the Gaochun's? How is this possible? At this moment, the three pure ones and Dong Huangtai were all dumbfounded. They had never dreamed that the Tree of World would belong to Feng Zichen. They had always thought that the Tree of World was a treasure that belonged to the Way of Heaven, so they had never taken it seriously. However, they had never thought that it would end up like this. If they had known that the Tree of World was Feng Zichen's treasure, they would not have competed with Feng Zichen at all. Since he already had the #1 treasure in the eyes of the Way of Heaven, there was no need to compete. Who could compete with him? This was such a trap. Ignoring everyone's shock, Feng Zichen just quietly stared at the divine land of the human clan. After receiving the blessing of the Tree of World, there were so many changes that Feng Zichen could not see them clearly. He only knew that the divine land was becoming more and more extraordinary. It seemed to be no weaker than the ancient untainted land, or even stronger. In terms of the density of the origin, it was comparable to the Archean era. In other words, the divine land already had the conditions to nurture innate gods and demons. Every inch of land and river was a treasure that was born from the innate essence and was filled with pure innate Taoist rhymes. Rumble. The will of heaven fell, and the benefits of being the orthodox untainted land also came. 30% of the origin of the 9 chaos demon gods that the Way of Heaven controlled fell from the sky, and merged with the divine land of the human clan. As for the other 4 continents, 10% of the origin of the chaos demon gods fell from the sky. As for the remaining 30%, 10% merged with the heavenly realm, and 10% merged with the nether realm. The Way of Heaven kept the remaining 10% as a backup. Rumble. With the blessing of the origin of the chaos demon gods, the 5 divine lands began to grow rapidly and gave birth to all kinds of mysteries. At the same time, their positions gradually changed. The divine land that belonged to the human clan stood at the center of the world and did not move at all. The divine land that belonged to the 3 pure ones, second only to the human clan's divine land, went to the east. Next was the divine land that belonged to the sorcerer clan. It was ranked 3rd and was placed in the south by the Way of Heaven. Next was the divine land that was ranked 4th. It was controlled by the demon clan and placed in the north by the Way of Heaven. Finally, the divine land that was ranked last in the west was still in the west. The moment the positions of the 5 great divine lands were completely determined, 5 pillars of light that connected the heavens and the earth suddenly rose from the heavenly Tao. The pillars of light hovered in the air for a long time before slowly condensing into 5 huge divine steels that landed at the borders of the 5 divine lands. The divine steels were very large, each of them hundreds of millions of feet tall. Different innate divine runes were engraved on them, and they were the names that the Way of Heaven had set for the 5 divine lands. They were the central divine land of the human clan, the Dongsheng divine land of the 3 pure ones, the Nanzhan divine land of the sorcerer clan, the north continent of the demon clan, and the Aparagodania divine land of the west. Although the 5 divine lands were of different sizes, they were all vast and boundless. If they were added together, their area would not be much smaller than the eldritch world of the ancient age of liches and demons. Among the 5 divine lands, the central divine land that had the world tree was the largest. It was almost as large as the other 4 divine lands combined. In addition to the 5 divine lands, there were countless islands of various sizes floating on the vast sea. They were all formed by the fragments of the eldritch world. Influenced by the aura of the 5 divine lands, these fragments became extraordinary and gave birth to innate chi. Yes, after the eldritch world was shattered, the 4 seas expanded countless times. Outside the 4 divine lands, it was almost all the sea that extended to the end of the world. In the next period of time, the strength of the Water Clan would probably enter a period of explosive growth. However, now that the eldritch world had undergone a great change, there was a trend of returning to the ancient age. Which force would not enter a period of explosive growth? Although the primary and secondary positions of the 5 divine lands had been determined, it did not mean that their changes had stopped. After suddenly obtaining so many origins, the 5 divine lands would have to evolve for a period of time before returning to peace. However, with the heavenly Tao presiding over this evolution, there was no need for Feng Zichen and the others to worry about it. Right now, they had more important things to do. That was to reopen the postnatal Tao and establish the postnatal system. Now, although the world had returned to the prenatal era, the world was filled with prenatal qi, and the prenatal Tao had all descended. However, the living beings of this world had long degenerated into postnatal living beings. It was easy for postnatal living beings to degenerate into postnatal living beings, but it was difficult for postnatal living beings to transform into prenatal living beings. It was not something that could be done by absorbing prenatal qi and living in a prenatal environment. It required many hardships. For specific details, please refer to the young Feng Zichen. As a postnatal living being, it was almost impossible for him to survive in the prenatal era. Even the most basic thing, absorbing prenatal qi for cultivation, was difficult. In the prenatal era, there was no way for postnatal living beings to survive. P.S. I'm dying of heat. I've been in a daze all day. I must buy an air conditioner in the next 2 days. I must tighten my belt and save money to buy one. F***ck. This damn weather is getting hotter every year. It's gradually not suitable for human survival. Are there any big shots who have left Earth? Bring me along. Chapter 809. In an era dominated by postnatal living beings, they could not allow only the connate Tao to exist in the world. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, what Feng Zichen and the others had to do was to open up the connate Tao and give the postnatal living beings a way to survive. They had to let the connate Tao and the connate Tao coexist in the new untainted land. At that time, those who were talented could cultivate the connate Tao. Those who were not talented did not have to despair. They could cultivate the simpler connate Tao. In short, they could not let the postnatal living beings lose the hope of cultivation. Otherwise, the resentment of all living beings would rise and entangle Feng Zichen and the others. Then, they would be greeted by the angry human Tao. Improving the environment of the world was a good thing. However, if it destroyed the hope of most living beings to cultivate and live forever, it would be a bad thing. With an idea in mind, Feng Zichen immediately took action. The rule fragments formed by the shattering of the connate Tao flew out of his hand one by one and collided with the connate myriad Tao. Almost every connate Tao fragment had a fragment of Zichen's sword hidden in it. Rumble! The post-celestial Tao collided with the Xianxia Tao, causing a shocking shockwave to be emitted. The newly restored void was once again shattered. Originally, the power of the connate Tao was no match for the connate Tao. No matter how they collided, they could not shake the connate myriad Tao. However, among the connate Tao fragments, there were fragments of Zichen's sword and Feng Zichen's enormous Dharma power. The connate Tao could not break the connate myriad Tao, but Zichen's sword and Feng Zichen's Dharma power could. The two worked together to support the connate Tao. When the fragments collided, the connate myriad Tao shook violently. Specks of light scattered and evolved into complete rule fragments, which were swallowed and absorbed by the connate Tao. The falling specks of light were the origin of the connate myriad Tao. After falling from their bodies, they evolved into the connate Tao's origin and were swallowed by the connate myriad Tao to become its growth resources. However, these origins were far from enough. If he wanted to create a larger and more complete Hotian system, he would need more innate origins. However, if that was the case, he would have to take the initiative to attack the innate myriad Tao. Feng Zichen thought for a while, but in the end, he did not make up his mind to do so. He could not bear the consequences of offending the innate myriad Das. If the human race wanted to grow stronger, they still needed the help of the innate myriad Das. However, although Feng Zichen did not want to make a move, someone would do it for him. After all, the appearance of the postnatal Tao was the wish, desire, and need of all living beings, and it was the inevitable result of the evolution of the heavens and the earth. This was the general trend, and no one could stop it. Even if the innate 10,000 Taos did not want to lose their source to become the postnatal 10,000 Taos, there would be people who would force them to agree. For example, the heavenly Tao and the human Tao. Rumble! The heaven and earth rumbled and a powerful force descended upon the innate Taos, forcing them to part of their origin. At the same time, a supreme power of 10,000 spirits emerged and acted on the innate Taos, forcing them to part of their origin. With a combination of the heavenly and human Taos, even if the innate 10,000 Taos were unwilling, they could not resist at all. The fragments of the postnatal Tao crashed over, and in a few moments, many cracks appeared on the body of the innate 10,000 Taos. Rumble! Large amounts of origin spewed out from the cracks of the innate 10,000 das, turning into a resplendent rain that sprinkled down, causing the fragments of the postnatal 10,000 das to become stronger and more complete. Gradually, there were signs of them fusing together again. And the moment cracks appeared on the body of the innate 10,000 das, Feng Zichen seized the opportunity and moved. He secretly formed a seal to awaken the fragments of Zichen's sword that were hidden in the postnatal 10,000 das, so that they could use the impact of the postnatal 10,000 das to crash into the innate 10,000 das, and then enter the body of the innate 10,000 das through those cracks. With the power of the heavenly Tao and the power of the human Tao, and Feng Zichen's actions were very secretive, no one noticed his little movements. Not long after, the fragments of Zichen's sword were all injected into the innate 10,000 das. The heavenly Tao and the human Tao were quite ruthless. In just a moment, the aura of the innate 10,000 das was greatly weakened. Perhaps they felt that they had gone too far. The power of the heavenly Tao and the human Tao began to fade. And with the withdrawal of the heavenly Tao and the disappearance of the fragments of Zichen's sword, the postnatal 10,000 das also lost the power to fight against the innate 10,000 das. When they collided with the innate 10,000 das, not only were they unable to move a single inch, they were also knocked flying by the powerful recoil. However, although the fragments of the postnatal 10,000 das could not shake the innate 10,000 das, the origin of the innate 10,000 das that they had just devoured had made them more than 100 or 1,000 times stronger. Sensing the powerful aura emanating from the fragments of the postnatal 10,000 das, Feng Zichen felt that it was almost enough. The postnatal system derived from this was definitely more powerful and perfect than the one derived from the three pure ones. With a thought, the scene of Pangu splitting heaven and earth appeared in Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness, and a huge heaven-splitting Tao intent emerged from his body. Then, Feng Zichen reached out and grabbed 3 superior-grade innate spiritual treasures from the central god province. When they saw the appearance of the 3 treasures, the eyelids of the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, and the Donghuang Tai twitched. That was because the appearance of the 3 Dharma treasures was exactly the same as the Taiji painting, Pangu's banner, and the Chaos Bell. If it weren't for the huge difference in level, the 3 of them would really think that their treasures had been stolen by Feng Zichen. That's right, the 3 treasures in Feng Zichen's hands were the imitation supreme-grade innate spiritual treasure Pangu's axe when he opened up the small primordial world. Its ability and function were almost no different from the 3 heaven-splitting treasures. It was just that its power was countless times weaker, and it was an infinitely weakened version of the 3 heaven-splitting treasures. Logically speaking, when the small primordial world was broken, these innate spiritual treasures should also be broken. Then the fragment should be thrown into the new Central God Province and be reborn by the origin of the Central God Province, so that they could transform into stronger innate spiritual treasures. However, thinking about the matter of opening up the postnatal system, Feng Zichen deliberately kept these 3 treasures. Since he wanted to open up the postnatal myriad Tao, he naturally had to do it perfectly. It was best to use this imitation that had been recognized by Pangu's axe. Combine! Feng Zichen's heart stirred, and the heaven-splitting Tao intent emitted from his body began to gather in his hands, gradually merging with the 3 treasures. Buzz buzz buzz. After absorbing the heaven-splitting Tao intent, the 3 treasures suddenly began to tremble and burst out with an incomparably dazzling light. At a certain moment, the divine light began to shrink from 3 to 1. It became more and more dazzling, but also more and more restrained. When it was extremely dazzling and restrained, the divine light suddenly disappeared. At this moment, the 3 treasures had completely disappeared, replaced by a giant axe that exuded a chaotic and boundless aura. The supreme-grade innate spiritual treasure Pangu's axe. Fake. Open. Grabbing Pangu's axe, Feng Zichen swung it down forcefully. The axe's blade chopped down on the fragments of the postnatal Great Tao, causing them to shatter further and turn into the most basic runes. Then, Feng Zichen swung the axe down again, enveloping the postnatal myriad Tao runes, breaking open the infinite space and embedding them in the deepest part of heaven and earth. Then, Feng Zichen swung the axe down again and again. The huge force acted on the postnatal runes, causing them to evolve and gradually intertwine into chains of laws, divine chains of order, spreading to every corner of heaven and earth. Every time Feng Zichen swung the axe down, the evolution of the postnatal runes sped up a little. After he swung the axe 49 times in a row, the new postnatal system could be considered to have been completely evolved. But even with Feng Zichen's strength, after swinging the axe 36 times in a row, he gradually became exhausted and could no longer swing the axe in his hand. In the distance, the eyes of the three pure ones, who had been watching Feng Zichen, lit up when they saw this scene. They felt that their opportunity had come. The three of them suddenly rushed forward and rushed to Feng Zichen's side, shouting at him, "Taoist Gaochen, don't worry. Let the poor Wei brothers help you." As they spoke, the three of them each took out their innate spiritual treasures, which evolved into Pangu's heaven-splitting axe light, and swung it at the postnatal runes. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In an instant, 3 dazzling heaven-splitting axe lights slashed down one after another, causing the evolution of the postnatal runes to speed up abruptly. After the 3 pure ones made their move, the rest of the saints and primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian also sensed something. They all stepped forward and came to Feng Zichen's side, each striking out a heaven-splitting light. First, it was Goddess Hutu and Nuwa, followed by Donghuang Taiyi and the 2 saints of the west. After that, Great Emperor Ziwei struck out an axe light from the boundless starry sky. The 7 saints and the 2 primordial chaos experts struck out a total of 9 axe lights. In addition to the 36 axe lights that Feng Zichen had previously struck out, there were a total of 45 axe lights. He was still 4 away from the 49 axe lights needed to open up the postnatal system. Boom! In the human emperor's palace in the ancestral land of the human race, Fuxi sensed something. He combined the power of the human race's divine city and temporarily raised his strength to the primordial chaos level. He struck out an axe light at the postnatal runes. At the same time, in the netherworld, the ghost emperor of Fengdu also struck out an axe light with the power of the netherworld. In the boundless starry sky, on the South Pole star, the longevity emperor suddenly merged with the power of the heavenly tribulation. His strength increased infinitely and entered the primordial chaos realm. He also struck out an axe light. It was also this strike that made everyone realize that the longevity emperor of the South Pole, who usually didn't show his strength, was about to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Merging with the power of the heavenly tribulation was a sign that he was about to break through to the primordial chaos realm. Otherwise, if he rashly merged with the power of the heavenly tribulation, it would be difficult for him to escape the fate of being assimilated by the power of the heavenly tribulation. That's right. After countless years, Feng Zichen's incarnation that was born in the Thunder Lake was finally about to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. His future path was clear. The obstacles on his path had also been cleared. He was just waiting for the eldritch world to stabilize, so that he could borrow the power of the heavenly tribulation to break through to the primordial chaos realm in one fell swoop. With Fuxi, the ghost emperor of Fengdu, and the longevity emperor taking action, the opening of the postnatal system was only 1 axe away. The 3 pure ones rolled their eyes and were about to join forces to strike again. However, at this moment, Feng Zichen suddenly used the power of the Tree of World to enhance his strength, causing his strength to instantly skyrocket to the 9th heaven of primordial chaos. Then, with lightning speed, he fiercely struck down with the axe and completely opened up the postnatal system. In fact, he could also strike out with the 50th strike. After all, the number of Dian was 50. 50 was the perfect number. However, the heavenly Tao wasn't perfect, but he made the postnatal system perfect. Who would be disgusted by this? Under the jealousy of the heavenly Tao, this perfect version of the postnatal system that had just been born would be destroyed by the jealous heavenly Tao. Therefore, 49 Daos was the best choice. 1 more would destroy it, and 1 less would make it less beautiful. Rumble! After the postnatal system was completed, the postnatal runes transformed into endless rules and orders in an instant. They spread between heaven and earth and quickly spread to every corner of the untainted land. This new postnatal myriad Tao was exactly the same as the connate myriad Tao. The only difference was that one emitted postnatal aura, while the other emitted connate aura. After the postnatal myriad Tao was completed, the connate myriad Tao didn't disappear and return to the origin of heaven and earth. Instead, it stayed and stuck closely to the postnatal myriad Tao, coexisting with it in the world. In this way, the postnatal myriad Tao was outside, while the connate myriad Tao was inside. In the future, when all living beings cultivated, the first thing they sensed was the postnatal Tao. Only those with extraordinary aptitude or excellent temperament could see through the cover of the postnatal Tao, and see the true appearance of the connate Tao inside. It was a very good setting that took care of almost every living being. In the future, the untainted land would enter the era of the connate and postnatal myriad Tao. It was believed that the untainted land would become very exciting at this time. Crack! Crack! After the creation of the postnatal myriad Tao, Feng Zichen's heaven-splitting axe, Pseudo, finally completed its mission. It shattered and turned back into 3 upper-grade Khanate spiritual treasures. They fell into the new Central God Province and disappeared completely. This wasn't a bad thing for them. After the creation of the postnatal myriad Dao and being nurtured by the origin of the Central God Province, their origins would be strengthened and they would be upgraded from upper-grade Khanate spiritual treasures to supreme-grade Khanate spiritual treasures. If he was lucky, Feng Zichen might be able to obtain another Khanate treasure. Looking away from the Central God Province, Feng Zichen no longer paid attention to the 3 treasures. Instead, he focused on the new postnatal myriad Dao. As expected, the postnatal myriad Dao created by the joint efforts of everyone was obviously different from the one created by the 3 pure ones. It was more powerful. The postnatal myriad Dao was filled with the qi of heaven and earth and everyone's qi. These qi intertwined with each other, causing the power of the postnatal myriad Dao to transform. P.S. When I was writing this chapter, thunder rumbled. I was really afraid that a bolt of lightning would strike and send me to meet the 3 pure ones Taoist priests. Amazing. Terrifying. Please use the monthly ticket to comfort my wounded heart. Chapter 8:10. Feng Zichen gave it a try and found that if he wanted to break the acquired universal Tao, he had to at least have the power of a great medium. If there were Daluo Taoist priests recklessly colliding with the acquired universal Tao, the remaining power of the crowd would erupt and blast the Taoist priests who dared to attack the acquired universal Tao into smithereens. Very good. Feeling the power of the acquired system, Feng Zichen couldn't help but nod with satisfaction. Although the acquired system was opened by the joint efforts of the crowd, Feng Zichen had contributed the most, so it began to take him as the master. After all, he was the one who chopped down the first axe, the last axe, and more than 30 axes were also chopped down by him. More than half of the 49 axes needed to open up the acquired system were chopped down by Feng Zichen. If he wasn't in charge of the new acquired system, who would be in charge of it? Rumble. The acquired universal Tao spread out and enveloped every corner of the untainted land. The land also changed accordingly. Part of the congenital qi was infected by the acquired universal Tao and suddenly began to transform. It transformed from congenital qi to acquired qi, which reverberated between heaven and earth. The acquired living beings couldn't absorb congenital qi. Therefore, after the acquired universal Tao spread out, the first thing was to transform the corresponding acquired spiritual qi for the cultivation of the acquired living beings. The appearance of the acquired universal Tao undoubtedly promoted the further perfection of heaven and earth. The way of heaven evolved the 5 continents at a faster speed. The 5 continents, which had been stagnant, suddenly began to expand rapidly again. In a few days, they had expanded to twice their original size. At the same time, the heaven realm also underwent a huge change. The origin of the primal chaos demon Celestial, who was suppressed in the Mi Luo Heavenly Emperor Pagoda, was constantly being refined, causing the space of the heaven realm to become even more vast and boundless. It seemed like it was about to catch up with the 9 ancient heavens. At the same time, the boundless Heavenly Emperor Pagoda was also transforming. It was constantly absorbing the origin of the chaos demon god, causing it to become more and more solid. Endless Tao and truth intertwined on its body, emitting the aura of a supreme treasure. At this rate it wouldn't take long, or even tens of thousands of years, the 33-layered Heavenly Emperor Pagoda, which was nurtured by the origin of the heaven realm, would truly be born and suppress the fate of the heaven realm. However, the Heavenly Emperor Pagoda was the Celestial Emperor's weapon and one of the symbols of his identity. How could the way of heaven allow the birth of the real Celestial Emperor? Not to mention the real Celestial Emperor, his weapon was not allowed to appear. Therefore, the Heavenly Emperor Pagoda was Celestial Emperor, Celestial Emperor, Celestial Emperor, Emperor, Emperor was to God, Emperor, God. Therefore, as long as the Heavenly Tao didn't have the Emperor, God, Emperor, God, 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 Emperor, Celestial, Heavenly God. Therefore, when the Heavenly Emperor's supreme treasure, the 33-layered encompassing Heavenly Emperor Pagoda, showed signs of being truly born, the Heavenly Tao took action. Heavens to heaven, God, God to heaven, heaven, heavens. The heaven, heaven, heavens, heaven, heaven. There were 36 heavens. Therefore, the heaven realm was incomplete and should be filled up. The 36 heavens were indeed better than the 33 heavens. However, the way of heaven didn't give this order earlier or later. Instead, it gave this order when the Heavenly Emperor Pagoda was about to be born. Its purpose was obvious. Feng Zichen turned his head to look at the heaven realm. Sure enough, he saw Hao Tian's completely dark face. After being stabbed by the way of heaven, this old man's mood wasn't very good. With anger in his heart, Hao Tian directly sat on the dragon throne. His aura, which was comparable to primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, suddenly erupted and swept through the entire primordial world. Hao Tian just wanted to sit here and watch. Without his cooperation, how would the way of heaven make up for the missing 3 heavens? The 36 heavens and the 33 heavens seemed to only have a gap of 3 heavens, but to make up for it was far from as simple as imagined. It wasn't something that could be done by just finding a few upper-class worlds. The 33 heavens of the heaven realm weren't as simple as the upper-class worlds. Each level of the heavens was hundreds or thousands of times larger than the top-class upper-class worlds. Moreover, in addition to being big enough, the world had to be a world formed by the innate clear qi. Otherwise, it couldn't merge with other heavens and become a part of the heaven realm. One had to know that the heaven realm was formed by the 9 heavens clear qi. It was the most noble. Not to mention the acquired qi, even ordinary innate qi couldn't get close to it. If the origin was different, it would be a dream to merge with the heaven realm. In the current primitive heaven realm, it was more difficult to find a top-class world formed by the 9 heavens clear qi than to create a world. Hao Tian didn't think that the way of heaven could find 3 top-class worlds that met the conditions of the heaven realm. However, Hao Tian forgot that there were no top-class worlds formed by the 9 heavens clear qi in the primitive world. However, there were 3 worlds that could become the heaven realm. They were the 3 pure heaven created by the 3 pure ones. They were the Tai Ching Saints' Dachi heaven, the heavenly Lord Yuanshir's Qingwei heaven, and the Tongtian sect leaders' Yu heaven. The 3 realms were the top-class worlds. They were created by the sages and were not much worse than the heaven realm. In addition, although the 3 realms were not formed by the 9 heavens clear qi, they were created by the 3 pure ones. Who were the 3 pure ones? At the beginning of the world, the first wisp of 9 heavens clear qi was formed by Panga's primordial spirit. They were the real ancestors of the 9 heavens clear qi. The heaven realm was their junior. The world created by the 3 saints was tainted with their aura. Although it wasn't a world formed by the 9 heavens clear qi, it was similar. With the aura of the 3 pure ones, the origin of the heaven realm wouldn't reject the integration of the 3 heavens. As for whether the 3 pure ones would agree to the request of the way of heaven to integrate the world they created into the origin of the heaven realm, of course they would. They still remembered the grudge of the apotheosis tribulation. If it weren't for the meddlesome people in the celestial court, the apotheosis tribulation wouldn't have developed into the current situation and caused them to suffer heavy losses. With anger in their hearts, the 3 pure ones were naturally happy to bring bad luck to the celestial court and prevent them from giving birth to a primordial treasure. It was just moving the world they created from the chaos outside the heavens to the heaven realm. How difficult was that? Not long after Tianji appeared, the 3 pure ones took action. They each used their supreme magic power to move the worlds they created from the chaos outside the heavens and placed them in the heaven realm. Rumble! In the roar of the heavens and the earth, the 3 top-class worlds shattered the endless void and descended from the chaos outside the heavens. With the support of the way of heaven, they turned into 3 heavenly domains filled with clear qi. They covered the top of the heaven realm and turned the 33 heavenly domains into 36 heavenly domains. In the end, the way of heaven took care of Hao Tian's face and didn't let the 3 pure ones land on his head. Instead, it was under his feet. After the 3 pure ones came to the heaven realm, Yu heaven turned into the 33rd heavenly domain, Qingwei heaven turned into the 34th heavenly domain, and Dachi heaven turned into the 35th heavenly domain. As for Hao Tian's Mi Luo heaven, it automatically rose by 3 heavenly domains from the original 33 heavenly domains to the current 36 heavenly domains. It was still the highest heavenly domain. This was probably the last bit of dignity the way of heaven gave him. Hao Tian's expression turned ugly when he saw the 3 pure ones take action. After the 3 pure ones merged with the heaven realm, the Mi Luo heavenly emperor pagoda that was about to be born was affected. In a short instant, it rose by 3 more levels. With 3 more levels, the Mi Luo heavenly emperor pagoda's power was undoubtedly stronger. However, its birth time was also extended indefinitely. After 3 more levels, the Mi Luo heavenly emperor pagoda's body, which was originally incomparably solid, suddenly became somewhat illusory. The heavenly Tao patterns that permeated its body also disappeared quite a bit. This is really interesting. It would be strange if Hao Tian doesn't hate the three pure ones to death now. Seeing this scene from afar, Feng Zichen silently ridiculed in his heart. The Khanate cardinal treasure was about to be in his hands, but it was destroyed by the three pure ones. No matter how much Hao Tian could endure the hatred of destroying such an opportunity, it would be difficult for him to swallow this anger. He had to get back at them. The commotion in the heaven realm was like the waves in the sea. It didn't cause much of a commotion in the wilderness. Under the control of the Way of Heaven, the 5 great continents continued to evolve. However, when the area expanded to a certain extent, which was 3 times the initial area, the speed of expansion of the 5 great continents stopped. They no longer continued to expand outwards, but instead evolved internally. In Feng Zichen's perception, streams of origin energy surged down from the Way of Heaven's body and merged into every corner and every inch of the land in the 5 great divine continents. Gradually, as the origin energy merged, the earth vein grew larger and more mystical, giving birth to endless creation. The earth was nourished and became extraordinary. It first transformed into spiritual land, then into a Khanate spiritual land. Apart from the 5 continents, the countless islands of various sizes floating on the sea might not have gained as many benefits as the 5 continents, but they had also gained some benefits, and thus became extraordinary. Feng Zichen even found that with the circulation of the creation qi, not only were Khanate spiritual treasures reborn in the 5 great continents, but also the aura of Khanate god-fiends appeared. Obviously, the origin of heaven and earth had become rich again, and the wilderness had the capital to nurture Khanate god-fiends. In addition, there were some special life forms that had never been seen before in heaven and earth. These were new Khanate life forms that were born when the Way of Heaven operated and the Tao tracks resonated with heaven and earth, and then merged with the Khanate qi. Every time the Way of Heaven changed, new Khanate life forms would be born under the operation of the rules to fill the diversity of the living beings in the wilderness. This was the inevitable result of the evolution of heaven and earth. It was impossible for there to be many races in the beginning and still be the same race after countless years. The evolution of heaven and earth and the replacement of living beings were the principles of heaven and earth. However, when the Way of Heaven changed in the past, it did not coincide with the overall promotion of heaven and earth, so there were not many Khanate life forms born. It was far from like now, when the origin of heaven and earth was abnormally rich, and there were more than 1 million Khanate life forms born. It was not an exaggeration to say that there were hundreds of races. Those who did not know would think that this was a repeat of the primordial age, when the laws of heaven and earth changed, and countless Khanate life forms were born. By the time these Khanate life forms were born, there would be at least 100 more races in the wilderness. By then, the wilderness would be lively, and there would be a lot of trouble caused by the new and old forces. Putting aside the unstable factors, the whole untainted land was developing in a good direction. It was getting stronger and stronger, and this was a change that could be seen with the naked eye. Rumble! At a certain moment, the evolving central divine land suddenly shook violently, and endless Khanate Tao light rose, illuminating a large area of the void. Then, hundreds of millions of mysterious runes appeared and lined up. They covered the entire central divine province and covered everything. The 9 states cauldrons. Are the 9 cauldrons about to advance? Feng Zichen sensed something and hurriedly looked in the direction of the 9 cauldrons. As expected, when his gaze landed there, he saw the 9 cauldrons rising from the ground and floating in the air. The dazzling Khanate Tao light had risen from them, and the billions of mysterious runes had also come from them. All of this was because they were advancing, transforming from superior to supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasures. The advancement of the 9 cauldrons as a whole also meant that if they were united, they would become Khanate peerless treasures. This transformation was not the transformation of superior to supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasures, but the transformation of supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasures to Khanate peerless treasures. Feng Zichen sensed that the auras of the 9 great masters sealed in the 9 cauldrons had completely disappeared. Clearly, they had been refined by the cauldrons and turned into the foundation for their advancement. That was not all. The chaos demon gods suppressed by the imperial court of human Tao, the divine city of the human race, and the chaos demon god's origin bestowed by the heavenly Tao had all flowed into the 9 cauldrons. That was why the 9 cauldrons could refine the 9 great masters they'd suppressed so quickly, completing the final transformation and becoming Khanate peerless treasures. Rumble! As the 9 cauldrons rumbled, boundless power poured out and formed a huge barrier in the sky above the central divine region. This was the boundary of the 9 province. With the transformation of the human domain into the central divine land, it had grown many times larger. When the boundary of the Nine province opened, it could no longer envelop the entire human race. Fortunately, the Nine cauldrons had already begun their advancement. Their power grew rapidly, and the boundary of the Nine province expanded rapidly as well. Soon it covered most of the central divine land. Rumble. 9 earth-shaking booms rang out one after another, shaking the entire wilderness. The 9 cauldrons had finished their advancement and were rapidly withdrawing their power. Soon, the 9 cauldrons looked no different from ordinary treasures. They hovered quietly in the air. However, the boundary of the 9 province expanded abruptly, enveloping the entire central divine land in an instant. Khanate peerless treasures. The central divine land was so large that only legendary Khanate peerless treasures could completely envelop it. Chapter 8:11. The 9 State Cauldrons. They had been upgraded to Khanate cardinal treasures. However, that was the state of the 9 cauldrons as one. Right now, the 9 cauldrons were not as one. Therefore, the 9 cauldrons looked like 9 top-tier Khanate spiritual treasures. Rumble. The boundary of the 9 states expanded rapidly until it covered the entire central divine prefecture. Only then did it stop. However, although the movement had stopped, the changes did not stop. Although the central divine province had stopped growing, it was still growing. In the future, as the origin of the chaos demon god was refined, the central divine province would continue to expand. The 9 state cauldrons had completely merged with the origin of the central divine province. As the central divine province expanded, their power gradually increased. As the central divine province continued to expand, the 9 cauldrons would also be upgraded. It was not impossible for them to be upgraded from inferior-grade Khanate cardinal treasures to middle-grade or superior grade. After the 9 cauldrons were upgraded, the boundary of the 9 states would also expand and cover the entire central divine province. The two were already in a mutually dependent relationship. Seeing that the humans had gained another Khanate cardinal treasure, everyone's expression turned ugly. One more Khanate cardinal treasure was equivalent to one more primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. The humans were undoubtedly stronger and more difficult to deal with. It would be strange if they were happy. However, from the upgrade of the 9 cauldrons, everyone saw a way to create a Khanate cardinal treasure. Wasn't the chaos demon god the best material to create a Khanate cardinal treasure? Without using the origin, one could create a Khanate cardinal treasure just by using the chaos demon god's body or even all of its bones. Thinking of this, the 2 saints of the West's eyes suddenly lit up. They seemed to have found a way to make up for the West's shortcomings. That was to create a Khanate cardinal treasure. If the West had a Khanate cardinal treasure, their foundation would undoubtedly be much stronger. Moreover, with one more Khanate cardinal treasure to suppress fate, the West would definitely give birth to more talented creatures. The West had too many shortcomings compared to the East. Khanate cardinal treasures were the most important. The East had at least 7 Khanate cardinal treasures, but the West did not have one. If the West had a Khanate cardinal treasure, it would be a breakthrough for the 2 saints of the West, even though it was still incomparable to the East. It would be the beginning of them catching up with the East. If there was a first, there would be a second. In the future, the West would definitely surpass the East. Harboring a strong sense of longing, the 2 saints of the West had already begun to ponder how to create the first Khanate supreme treasure of the West. Rumble. The birth of a Khanate cardinal treasure naturally alarmed the heavenly Tao. Amidst the boundless purple qi, the heavenly Tao quietly descended and looked down at the 9 cauldrons. Although the heavenly Tao had appeared, it had no intention of attacking the 9 cauldrons. Normally, when the 9 cauldrons were promoted to Khanate cardinal treasures, the heavenly Tao would definitely send down heavenly punishment as a test for the 9 cauldrons promotion. However, at this moment, the wilderness had been upgraded, and the aura of new life was everywhere. The 9 cauldrons had been upgraded to innate cardinal treasures at this moment, which could be said to be an excellent sign. It was a sign that the origin of the wilderness would be strengthened further. Therefore, when the 9 cauldrons were promoted, not only would the heavenly Tao not punish them, it would even reward them. Streaks of rainbow-colored light reverberated between heaven and earth, reinforcing the 9 cauldrons, making them look extremely noble. At the same time, the huge shadow of the 9 cauldrons suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. It was unbelievably huge, almost occupying half of the wilderness. Fortunately, all living beings had yet to return to their positions. Otherwise, all living beings would be able to clearly see the shadow of the 9 cauldrons as long as they raised their heads. This was the special honor that the heavenly Tao had given to the 9 cauldrons, allowing them to manifest their divinity in the wilderness. Of course, the purpose of doing this was not to show off. Instead, it was to tighten the destiny of heaven and earth. The 9 cauldrons had been promoted to connate cardinal treasures at this moment, coinciding with the destiny of the wilderness promotion. Therefore, they could receive a trace of the promotion destiny of heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao had given the 9 cauldrons such a special honor to help them better receive the promotion destiny. In the distance, everyone was envious when they saw the 9 cauldrons receiving the destiny of heaven and earth. Connate cardinal treasures were already extraordinary. Now that they had received a trace of promotion destiny, their power would at least increase by 30%. After the 9 cauldrons had been promoted, the changes in the wilderness had gradually stabilized. It would not be long before the changes in the wilderness turned from light to dark. At that time, it would be the time for all living beings to return to the wilderness. Well, since the wilderness had evolved until now, except for the primordial chaos experts present, the thousands of great mediums, and the Daluo Taoist priests who were silently guarding at the side, there was no other living beings living in it. That was right. The evolution of heaven and earth was an opportunity for the experts. But for mortals, it was a complete disaster. They could not leave mortals in the current wilderness. Otherwise, under the operation of the successive heavens Qi, countless living beings would be crushed and turned into the initial primordial Qi. With the heavenly Tao presiding over the evolution of heaven and earth, no one would take the initiative to intervene. They just watched quietly from the side, waiting for the evolution of heaven and earth to end. At the same time, they were also observing the evolution of heaven and earth, silently comprehending, trying to understand the principles of the operation of the heavenly Tao. Time. Just like that, the minutes and seconds passed. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. The evolution of the primordial world gradually reached perfection. The surging power of earth, fire, water, and wind completely calmed down and turned into the purest connate Qi that merged with heaven and earth. The successive heavens' essence energy also stopped transforming. It gradually became gentle and suitable for people to absorb. The rules of heaven and earth also became very perfect. It was like a huge net that covered the entire primordial world. At this point, the intense evolution of heaven and earth had ended. Next, it would enter a slow period. It would absorb the origin of the chaos fiend celestial bit by bit and strengthen bit by bit. Sensing that the changes in heaven and earth had already calmed down and become suitable for living beings in heaven and earth, the Grand Pure One opened his mouth and was about to ask everyone to release the living beings that had been taken away and let them return to the primordial world. However, at that moment, a change occurred in the boundless sky. Resplendent starlight erupted and interrupted the Grand Pure One's actions. Sensing that something was amiss in the boundless starry sky, everyone hurriedly looked up and saw stars in the primordial world. The resplendent Zhouxing appeared and hung in the sky. At that moment, the starry sky appeared and illuminated the entire primordial world. The gentle starlight sprinkled down as if it had covered the world with a layer of silver gauze. What's going on? Why did the boundless starry sky suddenly change? What is that guy Ziwei doing again? The change in the boundless starry sky was without a doubt related to Great Emperor Ziwei. Apart from him, no one else had the ability to cause trouble in the boundless starry sky. With doubts in their hearts, everyone released their divine consciousness one after another and looked in the direction of the boundless starry sky. They wanted to see what Great Emperor Ziwei was doing. However, before their divine consciousness could reach the boundless starry sky, they saw the Zhouxing in the sky suddenly shining brightly and releasing unprecedented starlight. Rumble! For a moment, starlight fell like rain, covering the sky and covering the earth as it fell towards the primordial world. Just as everyone's divine consciousness approached the boundless starry sky, before they could react, it collided with the starlight that poured down. Then, everyone's divine consciousness that could easily kill Daluo Taoist priests was actually melted by the resplendent starlight. Above the primordial world, the expressions of the 3 pure ones and other primordial chaos experts changed the moment they came into contact with the starlight. This was because, in their perception, the power contained in the starlight was far beyond their imagination. It had surpassed the level of primordial chaos and reached the level of Wuji Daluo Jingxian. That's right. It was Wuji Daluo Jingxian. At this moment, during the rebirth of the primordial world, Feng Zichen finally opened the huge seal of the boundless starry sky, allowing the radiance of the Zhouxing to fall on the primordial world again. Previously, Feng Zichen had sealed the boundless starry sky with the excuse that it was too broken and needed to be repaired. He had even intercepted 99% of the star power and only allowed 1% of the star power to flow into the primordial world. By doing so, the demon clan had formed a monstrous karma with all living beings in the primordial world. If it weren't for the demon gods sacrificing themselves to save the world, the monstrous karma would have made the demon clan unable to make a comeback. However, Feng Zichen was different. He intercepted the meteor power in the name of repairing the boundless starry sky. Even if he intercepted 99% of the meteor power, he would have no problem intercepting 99% of the meteor power. Of course, the premise of all this was that Feng Zichen really repaired the boundless starry sky. As long as he repaired the boundless starry sky, it would be a trivial matter for him to intercept the meteor power. The way of heaven wouldn't care about it at all. However, if Feng Zichen failed to repair the boundless starry sky, it would be a big deal for him to intercept the meteor power. Even if his identity was said to be the noblest in the primordial world, the monstrous karma would knock him down from the throne of great Emperor Ziwei. Fortunately, the boundless starry sky was under Feng Zichen's control. Not only was it repaired, but it was even one step closer. Its origin was more than 100 times stronger than before. It could be said that ever since Feng Zichen took over the boundless starry sky, this place had been in the process of becoming stronger. The power of the falling star power had reached the level of the Wuji Daluo Jingxian. This was the best proof. If it hadn't been promoted, how could Zhouxing's star power have reached the level of the Wuji Daluo Jingxian? In fact, the boundless starry sky had been completely repaired many years ago. Not long ago, the boundless starry sky had completed a breakthrough. It had risen from the level of primordial chaos to the level of Wuji. However, Feng Zichen had been keeping it a secret, so no one knew about the situation of the boundless starry sky. Although no one was clear about the situation of the boundless starry sky, they knew that ever since Feng Zichen took control of this place, the boundless starry sky had been in the process of becoming stronger. This could be seen from how he had borrowed the power of the boundless starry sky to suppress the saints and the chaos demon gods several times. Although they had expected the boundless starry sky to be very strong, no one had expected it to be so strong that it had surpassed the level of primordial chaos. This time, Feng Zichen had removed the seal, allowing the power of the boundless starry sky to be truly displayed in front of the world. It could be said that it had stunned everyone. It was really too strong. Rumble. Feng Zichen had released the star power that had accumulated for countless years. It was imaginable how strong it was. It was not inferior to the origin of 2 or 3 chaos demon gods. The starlight fell on the untainted land, causing the evolution process, which had entered a period of calmness, to become intense again. Rumble. Heaven and earth were shaking. The origin became stronger, the rules became stricter, and the void became more stable. The whole world was filled with a faint vitality. On the ground, someone tried to attack the void and found that it was as hard as it had been in ancient times. Only Lord Daoist Tai had the power to move the void, and only Taoist priests Daluo had the power to tear the void. It was terrifyingly hard. This meant that after countless years, the untainted land could once again withstand a battle at the level of Daluo Taoist priests without worrying about the destruction of the world. The world was really different, showing signs of repeating the glory of ancient times. This was the first time that after the calamity, the untainted land did not degenerate, but instead became one step closer. In the past, after the calamity, the world was basically broken and the origin was weakened. But this time, although the world was broken, the origin was not weakened. Instead, it became stronger. This was a change that had never happened before. This was a sign of the untainted land's prosperity. Rumble. The changes in the land were still happening. Under the support of the starlight, the 5 divine lands did not continue to expand, but the vitality in the divine lands was more than several times stronger. The connate creatures that were nurtured in them were showing signs of being born. In addition, more mysterious changes were happening. For example, the connate origin was constantly blending. More connate spirit treasures and connate god fiends were born and hidden in every corner of the 5 divine lands. Connate god fiends were nothing, but connate spirit treasures were rare. Although the primordial chaos experts did not care about them, their subordinates needed them. As the 5 divine lands continued to grow, the Khanate spirit treasures would become common goods again in the future. In the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen saw the changes in the world and could not help but smile proudly. Yes, he was very proud, and he had the right to be proud. The broken boundless starry sky was not only repaired in his hands, but also transformed. This was an achievement that no one could compare to. How could he not be proud? After this time, except for the Tao ancestor, anyone who saw him would have to bow their heads and greet him first. Even the Tao ancestor did not dare to accept his greetings and had to talk to him as his peer. The boundless starry sky was also the foundation of the untainted land. Feng Zichen had made him transform. This merit was second only to the creation of the heavens and earth. It was comparable to the merit of Goddess Hutu's creation of reincarnation. This was a truly great merit, so great that even the heavenly Tao did not know how to reward him. It's about time to start. Feeling that the star power in the boundless starry sky had almost been drained, Feng Zichen on the Z-Way star made a move. He stretched out his hand, turned into infinity, and grabbed at the untainted land. P.S. Sorry for the delay. Forget it, I won't explain. Kowtow twice. Bang. Bang. Chapter 8:12. Rumble. As the giant hand fell, the entire eldritch wilderness shook. Then, divine palaces surrounded by starlight emerged from all over the land. They were grabbed by Feng Zichen's hand and flew toward the boundless starry sky. Those were the universal divine palaces. In the past, Feng Zichen had left 2 sets of universal divine palaces in the human race to sort out the earth veins of the eldritch wilderness. He had left the smaller set in the human race to suppress the earth veins of the human race. As for the larger set, he had left it for the myriad races to suppress the earth veins of the eldritch wilderness. Not long ago, in order to shatter the eldritch wilderness and not increase the difficulty for the people, Feng Zichen had not used the power of the universal divine palaces to forcefully stabilize the eldritch wilderness. Because of this, after the eldritch wilderness was shattered, the 365 universal divine palaces that were located all over the eldritch wilderness were scattered to various places along with it. As the eldritch wilderness was restored and transformed into the 5 great continents, as well as countless continents and islands of various sizes, the scattered universal divine palaces were naturally useless. In the current eldritch wilderness, apart from the central divine land, the other 4 great continents had long become specious and completely different from the eldritch wilderness. Even if the 365 universal divine palaces landed on the 5 great continents, they would not be able to suppress the earth veins of the eldritch wilderness. Moreover, even if the universal divine palaces could suppress the earth veins, the masters of the other 3 great continents, the 3 pure ones, the 2 sages of the west, the Eastern Emperor Tai, and the others, might not let the treasures that belonged to Feng Zichen even take half a step into this place. Therefore, after much consideration, Feng Zichen decided to take back the 365 universal divine palaces. Their destiny had come to an end, and it was time for them to complete their final transformation. What transformation? Go against the Khanate and transform into Khanate spiritual treasures. In the boundless starry sky, there were still 365 Khanate spiritual treasures in the eldritch wilderness that were in the process of being nurtured. In order to strengthen the human race, Feng Zichen had repeatedly consumed the origin of the boundless starry sky, causing their nurturing time to be greatly delayed. Who knew how many years it would take for the universal divine palaces to be completely formed or even be born? Feng Zichen simply could not wait. Therefore, he came up with some bad ideas. For example, turning the 365 universal sacred palaces on the ground into offerings, and fusing them into the Khanate sacred palaces that were being nurtured to speed up the process of nurturing these Khanate spiritual treasures. Even though the universal sacred palaces on the ground were all postnatal utmost treasures, Feng Zichen had put in a lot of effort when creating them. Not only were they made of the corresponding star divine gold, but they were also fused with many corresponding origins of Zhouxing in each of them. Just from this point alone, these universal divine palaces could be said to be peerless amongst Hotian's supreme treasures. In terms of might, it was absolutely not inferior to a Khanate magic treasure in the slightest. Later on, these universal sacred palaces had been placed on the ground by Feng Zichen to suppress the desolate earth vein. It was connected to the starlight in the sky above and the energy of the earth below. In the middle, it was operated by the celestial being of Pangu. After being tempered by these three energies for countless years, the 365-cycle divine palaces had undergone unimaginable changes. Although they were not connate spiritual treasures, their power was comparable to that of connate spiritual treasures. The density of their connate origins was not inferior to that of connate spiritual treasures at all. In fact, it was even 30% stronger. After all, the connate origins contained in the universal sacred palaces were condensed by the celestial being of Pangu. How could their quality not be high? Feng Zichen had fused these universal sacred palaces into the connate sacred palaces that were being nurtured by Zhouxing. It would not be long before the connate sacred palaces absorbed the connate origins contained in these universal sacred palaces and were completely born. Moreover, the level of each universal sacred palace would not be lower than that of a superior connate spiritual treasure. Everyone present was knowledgeable. Although they did not know Feng Zichen's plan in the past, after seeing this scene, they could most likely guess his plan without even calculating. I didn't expect the boundless starry sky to flourish in the hands of the emperor. Looking at the aura of Zhouxing, it's actually several times stronger than when he was at his peak. How astonishing! Someone exclaimed in the void. The emperor was referring to Great Emperor Ziwei. In his hands, the boundless starry sky had reached an unprecedented level of glory and pinnacle. It could even replenish the primeval world and make the origin of heaven and earth even more dense. Everyone respected his merits, so they no longer addressed him by his name. Instead, they addressed him as the emperor to show their respect for Great Emperor Ziwei. In the North Continent, Dong Huangtai's expression turned even uglier after hearing everyone's exclamations. However, he could not say anything. After all, even if he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that Great Emperor Ziwei was far superior to him, and Dijun, putting everything else aside, the time that the two of them had ruled the boundless starry sky was definitely longer than Great Emperor Ziwei. However, in the hands of the two brothers, not only did the boundless starry sky not become stronger, but it was also declining. It was a stark contrast to when it was in the hands of Great Emperor Ziwei. Wasn't this a sign that the two brothers were inferior to Great Emperor Ziwei? In contrast to Dong Huangtai's ugly expression, the three pure ones, two sages of the West, and the others were extremely solemn when they saw this scene. 365 Heavenly Cycle Sacred Palaces. Could it be that the boundless starry sky is going to give birth to 365 innate spiritual treasures? Moreover, since the heavenly cycle can give birth to innate spiritual treasures again, I'm afraid they can also give birth to innate god fiends again. 365 innate spiritual treasures, 365 innate god fiends. Hiss! On the ground, the five sages all gasped when they thought of this. Although they did not want to believe this, judging from the aura that Zhouxing released now, their guess was 80% likely correct. Perhaps there were not as many as 365 innate god fiends, but there were definitely more than 200 of them. 200 innate god fiends was not a small number. No, it was quite a lot. It could be said that this was a very terrifying force. If they were allowed to grow, then Great Emperor Ziwei would become one of the strongest overlords in the primeval world. Great Emperor Ziwei usually did not show off his strength, but when he made his move, it gave everyone a huge shock. It was really shocking. Great Emperor Ziwei's strength could be said to be extremely strong, and he even had a top innate spiritual treasure in his hands. His strength was not weaker than any sage's. If he had a few hundred more innate god fiends under his command, then in the future of the primeval world, only the human race would be able to suppress him. No, that was not right. With the boundless starry sky as his backing, it was not impossible for Great Emperor Ziwei to surpass the human race and become the strongest overlord in the primeval world. Now the boundless starry sky had already surpassed primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian and reached the level of Wuji Daluo Jingxian. In other words, the boundless starry sky could be said to be the #1 sacred ground in the primeval world, and it had already surpassed Kunlun Mountain. With such a sacred ground, Great Emperor Ziwei's rise was inevitable. No one knew what kind of mysteries and fortunes were contained in this place, as well as what kind of opportunities it would bring to Great Emperor Ziwei. However, there was one thing that everyone was certain of, and that was that the benefits that Great Emperor Ziwei had obtained were absolutely beyond imagination. Even Zhouxing could be promoted, let alone the master of the boundless starry sky. He must have also been promoted and obtained unimaginable benefits. In fact, that was exactly the case. The moment the boundless starry sky was unsealed, apart from the vast astral power that surged towards the primeval world, Some of it also flowed into his body, turning into a majestic source of origin and enlightenment, and forcibly raising his realm. Then, Feng Zichen began to break through. From the 6th heaven of primordial chaos, he broke through to the 7th heaven of primordial chaos. After that, the astral power did not weaken. It still turned into the source of origin and enlightenment to raise his realm. The middle stage of the 7th heaven, the late stage, the peak stage, the early stage of the 8th heaven of primordial chaos, the middle stage. It was not until he broke through to the 9th heaven of primordial chaos that the astral power was completely exhausted, and it no longer raised Feng Zichen's realm. From the 6th heaven of primordial chaos to the 9th heaven of primordial chaos, an increase of 3 realms. From this, it could be seen that the benefits that great Emperor Ziwei had obtained this time were simply beyond the imagination of the world. If the 3 pure ones, the 2 sages of the West, and the others knew about it, they would be so envious that their eyes would turn red. Unfortunately, other than himself, no one else knew about great Emperor Ziwei's breakthrough. The 9th heaven of primordial chaos was a realm that even sages could not reach. It could be said to be the strongest existence below the Tao ancestor and the devil ancestor. And this was the realm that great Emperor Ziwei, Feng Zichen's true body, was at now. He was invincible in the primordial chaos. Primordial chaos was not counted. This was what it meant to come from behind and catch up. He was a living legend. In the future, he would become the strongest in the primordial chaos. Feng Zichen's experience could be said to be a true legend. No, it was a myth, a legend. If this were to spread, who knew how many jaws would drop, how many living beings would be amazed, and how many people would see him as a role model. Great Emperor Ziwei's attack did not last long. After collecting the heavenly cycle palace, there were no more signs of life. Zhouxing, on the other hand, began to tremble continuously. The starlight that sprinkled down became even brighter for a moment. Clearly, great Emperor Ziwei had begun to integrate the heavenly cycle palace. Putting aside the matter of the boundless starry sky for the time being, not long after receiving the support of the starlight, the violent changes in the primordial chaos gradually calmed down. In this way, after another 2,000 to 3,000 years, the changes in the world gradually calmed down, and it became suitable for living beings to live in again. This time, there were no problems. No one intervened to interfere with the changes in the primordial chaos, and it smoothly entered a period of calmness. Thus, Goddess Nuwa activated the mountain river map and released all the living beings of the primordial chaos that she had collected. The living beings that Goddess Nuwa collected were all from the east. As for why there were no living beings from the west, it was not because Goddess Nuwa was biased, but because the sages of the west did not allow it. Long before Goddess Nuwa took action, the 2 sages of the west had collected all the living beings of the west. They could not let outsiders touch the living beings of the west. After all, many of them were descendants of the chaos demon god. If they fell into the hands of Panga god system, the 2 sages of the west were really worried that something would happen to them. The living beings collected by the 2 sages of the west were easy to deal with. After all, they were all living beings of the west. They could just throw them to the Aparagodania continent and let them rebuild their homes. However, it was more troublesome for the east. The east was very big. Far bigger than the west. How big was it? It was so big that the other 4 continents, except for the Aparagodania continent, had evolved from the east. Thus, the biggest problem in front of everyone was how to divide these connate living beings. After a few rounds of discussion, they finally came to a conclusion. Feng Zichen would come forward and take all the humans back to the central divine province. Dong Huang Tai would come forward and take all the demons back to the north continent. Goddess Hutu would come forward and take all the witches back to the Nanzhan continent. Finally, the 3 pure ones would come forward and take all the immortal cultivators back to the Dongxing divine province. After each of them took action, there were still many living beings who had nowhere to go. How should they deal with them? There were quite a lot of living beings, about 1/10 of all the living beings. If they did not deal with them properly, there would be a lot of trouble. These living beings were not humans, demons, or witches. They had never cultivated the immortal Tao, the martial Tao, the Tao of God fiends, and other Taos related to everyone. To be honest, in the current primordial world, people who did not cultivate the above Tao were obviously not on the right path. It was understandable that they did not cultivate the martial Tao. However, the immortal Tao of the profound sect was spread so widely. If they did not cultivate it, there would be a problem. With a grudge in their hearts, everyone was unwilling to take over these living beings. However, although they were unwilling, there was no reason to leave these living beings here. Everyone communicated with their eyes for a moment and thought of a solution. It was very simple. Since they could not find a solution, they would just leave it to the heavenly Tao to deal with. Everyone could ignore these living beings, but the heavenly Tao could not. It would definitely take care of them. Wherever the heavenly Tao wanted these living beings to go, they would go. In this way, even if these living beings were dissatisfied with the results of the distribution, they would not blame it on the others. They would blame the heavenly Tao, who asked this to be distributed by the heavenly Tao. If it was not the heavenly Tao, who else could it be? After making a decision in their hearts, the few of them joined forces to activate the power of the heavenly Tao and let it make the final decision. With a flash of divine light, the countless living beings disappeared without a trace. Where did they go? In terms of merit, those who had more merit went to the best Central God Province. Those who were one level lower went to the second East Victory God Province. After that it would be the same. Those who had no merit or negative karma were distributed to the countless large and small islands outside the 5 major continents. In this way, the matter was perfectly resolved. As for the primordial world, because of the return of living beings, it had regained its former liveliness. At this time, firstly, the calamity had just passed, and the natural source of heaven and earth was abundant. Secondly, heaven and earth had been reborn, and the natural spiritual energy was rich. The myriad Taos were unusually clear. In other words, the primordial world had once again ushered in the golden age of cultivation. In this era, cultivating and becoming an immortal could be said to be as simple as eating and drinking. Chapter 8:13. Wasn't that the case? The chi of successive heaven was so dense that one could breathe it in just by breathing it in, let alone deliberately absorbing it. In the past, one needed to calm down and concentrate to absorb the spiritual chi from the void. Now, one also needed to concentrate. However, the goal was to control the amount of spiritual chi that one absorbed, so as to prevent one from exploding from the majestic spiritual chi. The difference between them could not be measured by reason. It was too big. Apart from that, the difference between the successive heaven and the myriad Tao was more than billions. In the past, everyone searched for it bitterly, but they might not be able to see the true appearance of the laws. But now, as long as one focused slightly, one could clearly see the densely packed chains of laws that spread between heaven and earth. It could be said that in this era, even a pig could cultivate to become an immortal. They were truly standing at the edge of the wind and caught up with the environment. It was like the beginning of heaven and earth. The living beings living in this world had really picked up a treasure. Not to mention sky immortals, mystic immortals and golden immortals. Even Daluo Jingxian could easily become a golden immortal. Even the Daluo Taoist priests, who had almost become a legend, could easily become 100 times, or even 1,000 times more powerful in this era. Such a special environment also created a large number of experts. In just a few thousand years, more than 1 million immortals were born in this world. Even Daluo Jingxian was born no less than 100. After another 1,000 years, even a Daluo Taoist priest was born. The superior environment of this world was simply beyond the imagination of the people. Almost all the orthodoxies, regardless of whether it was martial arts, immortal Tao, pill Tao, equipment Tao, demon Tao, celestial demon Tao, or dozens of other cultivation paths, all began to flourish in the Eldritch world. The long-awaited golden age of cultivation. Everything was recovering, everything was rising, and everything was becoming stronger. But all the powerful people who were paying attention to the Eldritch world knew clearly that the golden age was really coming. Later on, even the ordinary cultivators knew that the golden age was coming. All the orthodoxies were reviving, and the Eldritch world would return to its ancient glory. In this era, everyone had the possibility of becoming a Tao. Daluo Taoist priests were everywhere, and the era of quasi-saints was about to return. Everyone was happy to see the untainted wilderness prospering. However, there was one person in the boundless starry sky who couldn't help but frown after seeing this. It was the god of the South Pole, the Thunder Lock, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. Seeing the current situation of the untainted land, not only was he not happy, but he was also greatly worried. It was not that he could not bear to see the primordial world doing well. The untainted land was a good thing for everyone. They could also benefit from it. Naturally, The Thunderlock was happy to see the untainted land become better. However, at this moment, it was not a matter of whether the world was good or not. It was just that there were too many immortals in the untainted land. There were so many that even the heavenly Tao was a little displeased. Immortals seemed to be free and unfettered, but to heaven and earth, they were a great disaster. They were the parasites of heaven and earth. Why did he say that? Because they wouldn't die. Birth, old age, sickness, and death were the cycle of heaven and earth. They were also the foundation of the endless cycle of heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao used its essence to create living beings. After living a lifetime, its essence would return to the world after death. In this way, it would neither increase nor decrease. It would not lose the power of the heavenly Tao at all. It could even strengthen the power of the heavenly Tao. It was a perfect and balanced process. However, the appearance of the immortals broke this balance. They went against the heavens and obtained longevity. From then on, they could live forever and stay in the world forever. This made it so that the heavenly Tao could not take back the essence that was used to create them. As the immortals continued to improve, they were also constantly devouring the power of heaven and earth. The higher the realm of the immortal, the more power of heaven and earth they would devour. Naturally, they were not liked by heaven and earth. When cultivators cultivated, they only entered and did not exit. They were getting stronger and stronger, but heaven and earth were getting weaker and weaker because of this. In such a situation, how could the heavenly Tao not see immortals as parasites of heaven and earth? Those who harmed heaven and earth to enrich themselves were all parasites of heaven and earth. They were both going against the heavens. There were too many immortal cultivators who could write novels. Novels also knew the content of output. However, immortal cultivators only entered and did not exit. They were really ruthless. The more immortals there were in heaven and earth, the angrier the heavenly Tao was. This was because the drawbacks of the increasing number of immortals had begun to appear. The simplest example was that the speed of the increase of spirit qi in heaven and earth had begun to slow down. This was very abnormal because the essence of the chaos fiend god had not been completely refined. The spirit qi in heaven and earth should be increasing faster and faster. But now, it was slowing down. What was the problem? The simple reason was that the spirit qi in heaven and earth was being consumed in large amounts. This caused the growth of spirit qi to become slower and slower. And the spirit qi that was being consumed was being absorbed by the immortals. It might not be obvious now, but as the number of immortals increased in the future, the spirit qi in heaven and earth would become thinner and thinner. When the heavenly Tao could no longer tolerate it, a new calamity would erupt. The immortals would then face the calamity and die in large numbers. The essence would return to heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao would return to its peak and heaven and earth would welcome a prosperous era again. Then, a large number of immortals would appear again. Then, the heavenly Tao would be angry and the calamity would erupt. Round after round of reincarnation. As the one who controlled the power of the heavenly tribulation, Lei Zhe could feel the wrath of the heavenly Tao more directly than anyone else. In his vision, the power of the heavenly tribulation was surging wildly, entangling the rules and intertwining with unparalleled lightning. And the lightning was formed by the wrath of the heavenly Tao. When the heavenly Tao was angry, the power of the heavenly tribulation that Lei Zhe had set up earlier would increase by 30%. The immortal ascension tribulation was really getting more and more difficult. But even so, it still could not effectively stop the birth of immortals. It had been an aeon since the heavenly tribulation appeared. Although the people did not dare to say that they completely understood the heavenly tribulation, each of them had their own ways to deal with it. Although they did not dare to say that they could completely restrain the heavenly tribulation, they could still reduce some of its power. Since the heavenly tribulation appeared, it was no longer as intimidating as it was when it first appeared. Everything in the world had its own counter. Since the heavenly tribulation had appeared, there was naturally a way to restrain it. This was the truth of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was really contradictory. Looking at the rolling power of the heavenly tribulation in the void, as well as the connate lightning that was crazily surging in the rules, the southern extremity longevity emperor, also known as Lei Zhe, knew that his opportunity to attain the Tao had arrived. It was not to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, but the opportunity to become a sage. Yes, he was not mistaken. It was to become a sage. Although Lei Zhe did not have the Hongmeng purple qi, which was known as the foundation of becoming a sage, he still saw the opportunity to become a sage in the power of the heavenly tribulation. If he became one with the power of the heavenly tribulation and became the existence that controlled the heavenly tribulation, helping the heavenly Tao to reduce the number of immortals in the world, there was no doubt that the Hongmeng purple qi, which was known as the foundation of becoming a sage, would descend in front of him in an instant. Lei Zhe did not care much about reducing the number of immortals. Because if he really did make a move, those great mediums would not become enemies with him because of this. They would even secretly help him. The so-called immortal Tao had always been about the quality and not the breadth. If not for this, there would not have been the birth of the God-conferment tribulation. The so-called God-conferment tribulation, although Feng Zichen had done so many things, caused its scope to be very wide. It almost included the three realms of heaven, earth and man, as well as all the great sections. However, its original intention was only to clean up the immortal Tao by Tao ancestor Hongjun. It was just that Feng Zichen had played it a little bigger, and in the end, it gradually got out of the control of everyone. Tao ancestor Hongjun used the God-conferment tribulation to remove those with shallow fortune from the immortal Tao, leaving only the elites behind. His purpose, other than to make the immortal Tao purer, was also to reduce the power of the tribulation. The more immortals there were, the greater the harm to the world. How could Tao ancestor Hongjun not know this principle? Therefore, from the beginning, the immortal Tao had taken the path of the elite. Only those with great perseverance, great luck, and great wisdom could cultivate the immortal Tao of the Xian sect. However, in order to fight for luck, the later generations simplified the immortal Tao of the Xian sect. This went against Tao ancestor Hongjuan's original intention, and lowered the high and mighty threshold of the immortal Tao. This was how it became a common thing that everyone could cultivate. Since the beginning of the ancient times, the immortal Tao was exclusive to the innate fiend gods. Only those who performed extremely well were qualified to be imparted the immortal Tao. As for the other living beings, they could only look on. The immortal Tao, before the three pure ones became saints, had always been high and mighty. How could it be like today, where anyone with a little bit of talent could cultivate it? For their own selfish reasons, the three pure ones kept on simplifying the immortal Tao. This was why the threshold was constantly lowered. To the immortal Tao, this was undoubtedly a good thing. Because as the threshold was lowered, the immortal Tao would undoubtedly prosper. However, to the world this was not a good thing. When there were more immortals, the world would weaken. When there was prosperity with the heavenly Tao, all living beings would suffer. When there was prosperity with all living beings, the heavenly Tao would suffer. It was hard to tell who was right and who was wrong. The human race also had vested interests. Feng Zichen could not say that the three pure ones were wrong. However, no matter what, it was true that the three pure ones had gone against Tao ancestor Hongjuan's original intention. Tao ancestor Hongjuan's imparting of the Tao was about quality, not breadth. Therefore, the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace could roam the world. At the beginning of the ancient times, Tao ancestor Hongjun was the first saint. With his ability, could he not spread the immortal Tao throughout the primitive world? Of course he could, but he was unwilling. At that time, there were more than 3,000 innate fiend gods and Daluo Taoist priests. However, in the end, the Tao ancestor only chose the 3,000 most outstanding ones. His thoughts were already very obvious. He only wanted the elites and nothing else. However, the three pure ones were different. In order to seek providence and spread the immortal Tao, they imparted the Tao in quantity, not quality. Yes, other than the Grand Master of Heaven, the three pure ones did not take in many disciples. However, did they have to take in disciples to impart the Tao? When they first attained the Tao, they often preached the immortal Tao to the world on Kunlun Mountain. Wasn't that spreading the immortal Tao? Without a doubt, the reason why the current cultivation world of the primitive world was so prosperous and full of flowers was related to the three pure ones' disregard for the preaching of the Tao back then. The reason why the three pure ones were called the three pure ones by some people was not only because they were powerful. It was also because they had made indelible contributions to the development of the cultivation world of the primitive world. That was also the reason why Feng Zichen could not shake the three pure ones, even though he had repeatedly slapped them in the face. Their contributions were too great. Moreover, these contributions were basically obtained by going against the heavenly Tao. In order to impart the Tao to all living beings, the three pure ones really went against the heavenly Tao. They endured great pressure, which created the current cultivation world. It could be said that all living beings in the primitive world owed the three pure ones karma. Even Feng Zichen could not deny that the human race had benefited a lot from the three pure ones in the early stages of development. More than 80% of the early experts of the human race had heard the three pure ones preaching and received the three pure ones' grace. And Feng Zichen was even more amazing. He had secretly learned all the inheritance of the three pure ones. His strong foundation was laid from this. To be honest, it was a little embarrassing. Feng Zichen, who was an enemy of the three pure ones, was quite ungrateful. But there was no other way. Who asked the three pure ones to be so determined to plot against the human race? If there were no humans, Feng Zichen would probably be able to be a Xianxia in peace and silently contribute to the development of the Xian sect. But there was no choice in one's birth. Since he was born as a human, he should be proud of it. He should be indomitable. The human race should take it as our responsibility to strengthen the human race. This was the philosophy that Feng Zichen had been instilled in him since he was born, and he had been carrying it out. For the sake of the human race, it was nothing to bear a little infamy. In order to develop the human race, before Feng Zichen, countless human pioneers had fallen on the road and sacrificed their precious lives. These people were really dead when they died. Even Feng Zichen could not resurrect them because that was the last glorious period of Mount Buzhou. No one could interfere with the past. Compared to those martyrs who had sacrificed their lives, Feng Zichen bearing a little infamy was nothing. Moreover, if he did not take the initiative to expose his relationship with the Xianxia, he would not be able to bear even a little infamy. Very stable. Old cunning. There was no hatred in the world for no reason. The reason why the heavenly axiom tried so hard to break up the three pure ones might not be without a reason. When the disciples made mistakes, the master had to think of a way to clean up their mess. Therefore, Tao ancestor Hongjun had been looking for opportunities to simplify the immortal path. The God investiture tribulation was only one of his many methods. The others, such as supporting other orthodoxies or even supporting the fiendish path to fight against the immortal path. It was not that Tao ancestor Hongjun had not done it before. The immortal path had 6 saints. If not for Tao ancestor Hongjun's secret support, which orthodoxy could fight against the immortal path? He could destroy it with a wave of his hand. As for the heavenly axiom not allowing it, there were many things that the heavenly axiom did not allow. At most, they would hide a little. They said that Feng Zichen was cunning because they did not understand Tao ancestor Hongjun. He was the biggest cunning person in the primordial world. Feng Zichen's cultivation was still a little lacking. In order to clean up his disciples' mess, Tao ancestor Hongjun thought of a way to reduce the number of immortals to delay the arrival of the tribulation. P.S. I was too anxious. I almost posted it in my new book. It's so exciting. Chapter 8:14. It was the opposite of Tao ancestor Hongjun's method. Feng Zichen's method was to expand. Although the methods were different, both of them were using their own methods to change the primordial world. Their goals did not conflict. Because these two methods could go hand in hand. Expanding resources and reducing expenditure was the way to save the world. At this moment, Lei Zhe watched the power of the heavenly tribulation surge and understood his opportunity to become a saint. That was to reduce the number of immortals in the world. This idea was consistent with Tao ancestor Hongjun's. Quality was more important than quantity, so that those with deep negative karma would not be able to live forever. Only those with merit and virtue had the right to aspire to the immortal realm. This method could be considered a way to reduce expenditure. The reduction of the number of immortals in the world was a good thing for the world. It was also a good thing for those with great mystical abilities who did not like the calamity. Therefore, if Lei Zhe really wanted to do that, there would definitely be many great mystical abilities in the world that supported him. However, the only thing that was worrying was whether he should become a saint or not. Becoming a saint would bring endless benefits, but he had a fatal flaw, which was that he would be controlled by the heavenly Tao. As such, Feng Zichen was in a difficult position. It was obviously not worth it to be controlled by the heavenly Tao in order to become a saint. However, on second thought, Feng Zichen thought it through. Lei Zhe was only an incarnation of him. It was not a big deal to let him become a saint. It would not affect his original body. In fact, after Lei Zhe became a saint, he could even use the authority of a saint to spy on the true situation of the heavenly Tao and secretly investigate Tao ancestor Hongjun's plan. If there was a chance, It might be possible for him to obtain the authority of the heavenly Tao in the future. Why couldn't he do what Tao ancestor Hongjun could do? It was not like Feng Zichen did not have the fragments of the creation jade butterfly. Moreover, other than the fragments of the creation jade butterfly, he also had many treasures related to the heavenly Tao. In the past, Feng Zichen had no interest in meddling with the heavenly axiom. For example, the mark of the great Taoist priests, the identity of the great emperor of Ziwei and the heavenly axiom originated from the same source and so on. He had only used them to strengthen himself and had never taken the initiative to come into contact with the heavenly axiom. But after Luai's became a sage, Feng Zichen could use these things to meddle with the authority of the heavenly Tao. In the future, he could even compete with Tao ancestor Hongjun for the control of the heavenly Tao. Although that was the case, it was almost impossible to compete with Tao ancestor Hongjun for control of the heavenly Tao. After all, he had painstakingly planned for so many years. How could he easily make a wedding dress for an outsider and let others pluck the peach? Feng Zichen, this is a gamble. If he succeeded, he would naturally make a huge profit. If he failed, he would only lose a clone and part of his authority, but that wouldn't shake his foundation. Take a gamble and turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. That was what Feng Zichen thought, and that was what he did. With a thought, Feng Zichen's spiritual consciousness left the body of the great emperor of North Star and came to Luai's consciousness. He took over his body and prepared to merge with the power of the heavenly tribulation to prove his opportunity to become a sage. Rumble! A majestic divine thought gushed out from Luai's body. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the entire untainted land and resonated with all the thunderbolts and the omnipresent power of the heavenly tribulation. Bang! 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 The world suddenly darkened. Countless thunderbolts appeared out of thin air and flashed in the sky, releasing shocking lightning. Rumble! As the thunder rumbled, the power of the heavenly tribulation surged wildly and gradually merged with the lightning. Rumble! When the thunder rumbled again, it carried a trace of the heavenly tribulation aura and had truly transformed into tribulation thunder. The terrifying aura spread out and caused the world to fall into an oppressive state. In an instant, almost all the cultivators below Daluo Jingxian felt that a great calamity was about to befall them. It was as if the divine thunder in the sky was targeted at them and would strike down at any time to end their lives. The thunder was formed by the heavenly tribulation. Under the might of heaven, how many people would not be afraid? How could they not feel fear in their hearts? It wasn't that there weren't any, but that there were too few of them. It was already considered a lot if there was 1 in 100 million living beings. Therefore, under the heavenly tribulation, the living beings couldn't help but feel great fear in their hearts. In an instant, fear spread between heaven and earth, causing the atmosphere to become even more oppressive. All of the living beings present began to tremble with fear. Ha! With a deep roar, Luai's Dharma power spread out and merged with the tribulation aura that filled the world. In an instant, the power of the thunderbolts in the sky increased by another 3 times. Rumble! In the roar of heaven and earth, Luai's body slowly disintegrated and turned into a huge amount of energy that poured into the eye of tribulation. Bas! 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 Luai's origin was extremely powerful. When it was all merged into the eye of tribulation, the enhancement it brought was undoubtedly beyond imagination. In the dazzling Tao light, chains of order flew out of the eye of tribulation's body like a net that seemed to envelop the world. Whoosh! In an instant, the eye of tribulation became infinitely large. It stood erect between heaven and earth so that all the living beings in the untainted land could see it clearly. The purple vertical eye towered between heaven and earth. From afar, it looked like a huge crack had split open between heaven and earth. It looked extremely terrifying and sent chills down one's spine. At the same time, with a whoosh, a beam of Tao light appeared and shrouded the entire untainted land. Then, the tribulation aura that filled the world seemed to be guided and crazily surged into the eye of tribulation's body. Vaguely, a blurry figure slowly took shape in the eye of tribulation's pupil. It was Luai's. He was reforming his Tao body with the tribulation aura of heaven and earth. It was called the indestructible body, also known as the saint body. He wanted to attain Tao and become the saint who controlled the calamities. He wanted to be the spokesperson of the heavenly Tao and the executioner. With lightning in one hand and calamities in the other, he wanted to bring endless calamities to all living beings. If Luai's attained Tao, he would be the 8th saint of the untainted land, the tribulation saint. Rumble. More and more tribulation aura surged and became a part of Luai's indestructible body. It kept strengthening him. Vaguely, a supreme saint aura spread from Luai's body. Is the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor about to become a saint? But he doesn't have the Hongmeng purple chi. How can he achieve the final step of merging his primordial spirit with the heavenly Tao? Sensing the movement between heaven and earth, especially when the supreme saint aura spread out, the crowd could roughly guess what had happened even if they didn't want to know. The Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, one of the 4 deities of the heavenly court, was about to become a saint. But how was that possible? Everyone knew that one couldn't become a saint without the Hongmeng purple chi. As for the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, the crowd could basically conclude that he didn't have the Hongmeng purple chi. Then how was he going to take the final step? Puzzled, the crowd stared at Luai's closely. They wanted to see what methods he used to become a saint. No one doubted that Luai's would fail. Because the phenomenon of becoming a saint had appeared. It meant that the heavenly Tao had recognized Luai's as the saint. If that was the case, how could Luai's fail? As time passed, more and more tribulation aura surged toward the Eye of Tribulation. One could see that Luai's figure was becoming clearer in the Eye of Tribulation. But he was still a long way from being fully formed. The tribulation aura surging toward him was far from enough. Luai's needed more. More. Thinking of this, Luai suddenly opened his eyes and shouted with a loud voice. Heavenly Tao, today, I, Luai's, the god of Luai's, see that the laws of heaven and earth are incomplete. I am willing to set up the 3 calamities and 9 disasters to make up for the path of tribulation. I hope the heavenly Tao will bear witness to this. His voice was so loud that it reverberated through the entire eldritch world. Everyone could hear him clearly. All of a sudden, a bad premonition arose in the hearts of everyone present. Although they didn't know what the 3 calamities and 9 disasters were, they instinctively felt that this was very unfavorable to them and would affect their future. Terrified, the crowd wanted to object. But in the face of the heavenly Tao's might, how could they dare to speak? Just as the crowd was hesitating, another loud voice resounded in heaven and earth. What are the 3 calamities and 9 disasters? The voice was emotionless and cold. It was the heavenly Tao's voice. It was asking Luai's what the 3 calamities and 9 disasters were. It was normal for the heavenly Tao to have questions that it didn't understand. This was because the heavenly Tao was incomplete. If the heavenly Tao was omniscient, omnipotent, and perfect, why would it need a saint? The purpose of a saint's existence was to help the heavenly Tao to make up for the inadequacies of heaven and earth. Hearing the heavenly Tao's question, Luai seemed to be answering the heavenly Tao and explaining to the crowd. He replied with a loud voice. The so-called 3 calamities and 9 disasters are the tribulations that one must encounter on the path of cultivation. Cultivation is originally a path that defies the heavens. Therefore, stepping on this path will inevitably lead to countless tribulations. On this path, only those with great perseverance, great luck, and great wisdom can reach the peak. The 3 calamities and 9 disasters are the tribulations on the path to immortality. They are specially used to select the above 3 categories. At the same time, it is also to tell the masses that immortality is not easy. Longevity is even rarer. Since you have achieved so much, you should cherish what you have. Don't let your tens of thousands of years of cultivation go to waste. After lamenting, Luai's finally began to explain the 3 calamities and 9 disasters. The 3 calamities are divided into 3 major and minor calamities. The 3 minor calamities are the tribulations that mortals have to overcome before they reach immortality. They are the tribulations of weapons, plague, and famine. Mortals are weak. If there is a slight disturbance, they will die and their souls will enter the netherworld. Therefore, only by overcoming the 3 minor calamities can one be qualified to seek immortality. The 3 major calamities are the tribulations of those who achieve immortality. After becoming immortal, there will be 3 calamities. The immortal Tao is an unusual Tao. Therefore, after the Tao is achieved, ghosts and gods will not tolerate it. Although you can preserve your youth and live longer, 500 years later, when lightning strikes you, you have to see your nature clearly and avoid it in advance. If you can avoid it, you will live as long as the heavens. If you can't, you will die. 500 years later, a fire will burn you. This fire is not the heavenly fire, Nor is it an ordinary fire. It is called the Yin fire. It burns from the Yongquan acupoint in your body and goes all the way to your Niyuan palace. Your organs will turn to ashes and your limbs will rot. It will turn your 1,000 years of ascetic cultivation into an illusion. 500 years later, a wind disaster will hit you. This wind is not the wind from the east, south, or west. It is not the wind from the north, nor is it the wind from the willows, pines, and bamboo. It will blow from the fontanelle into the 6 organs, pass through the dantian, pass through the 9 orifices, and dissipate the flesh and bones. After the 3 calamities, there are 9 calamities. The 9 calamities are also divided into big and small. The small 9 calamities are the difficulties of seeking Tao. Before the great medicine is formed, it is difficult to resist the cold and heat. Within a year, clothes are needed for the 4 seasons. Before the true qi is formed, there is still hunger and thirst. Within a day, 3 meals are needed. Those who follow the Tao suffer from clothing and food. This is the first calamity. The fate of the husband is heavy. It flows into this world to fill it up. Taking leisure in the midst of work is restrained by the elders. Restrained by the elders and unable to bear to escape, it has always been a rare leisure time. Those who follow the Tao suffer from the elders' invitation to stop. 2 calamities. Those who follow the Tao suffer from the entanglement of love. 3 calamities. Entangled by fame and fortune. 4 calamities. Calamities occur without restraint. 5 calamities. Restrained by the blind master. 6 calamities. Discussing the differences. 7 calamities. Slack in the will. 8 calamities. Wasting time. 9 calamities. Only by avoiding these 9 calamities can one achieve the Tao. Among the 9 calamities, there might be 1 or 2 that cannot be persevered. However, it is futile and will not succeed. The 9 calamities are the tribulations of immortals. They are formed by the earthly calamity, human calamity, demon-god calamity, samadhi calamity, nature calamity, karma calamity, mind calamity, soul calamity, and calamity. Those who have just achieved the immortal Tao can only achieve the carefree realm of Daluo Jingxian by passing these 9 calamities. Lei Zhe had set up the 3 calamities and 9 calamities. Before the heavenly Tao had even responded, the expressions of all living beings had already turned extremely ugly. Too vicious. If they really did as Lei Zhe said, the number of cultivators in the world would be reduced by at least 90%. In the past, they only needed to pass the lightning tribulation to become an immortal. After that they could be carefree. But now, with the 3 calamities and 9 calamities, everything was different. Putting aside the 3 calamities and 9 calamities that had yet to achieve the immortal Tao, there was now sufficient spiritual energy in the world. There was no need to worry about this problem. However, the 3 calamities and 9 calamities were a headache. After becoming an immortal, not only would one not be able to relax, it would also be the beginning of the calamities. Every 500 years, one would have to undergo a calamity. After passing it, one would be carefree for 500 years. Then, after 500 years, one would have to undergo another calamity. This cycle would repeat until one reached the realm of Daluo Jingxian. Who could endure this? Moreover, in order to become a Daluo Jingxian, one had to pass the 9 calamities. If one did not pass the 9 calamities, no matter how talented one was, one would not be able to become a Daluo Jingxian. The 9 calamities and the 3 calamities were the same. After passing it, one's cultivation would improve greatly. If not, one would die. Lei Zhe was forcing all living beings to cultivate. From now on, the saying in the cultivation world, if one did not advance, one would fall behind. It would become true. Because if one did not advance, one would die. Although the living beings were unwilling, they could not resist. The one who had the final say was still the heavenly Tao. Whether or not the 3 calamities and 9 calamities could be set up depended on the final decision of the heavenly Tao. After listening to Lei Zhe's explanation of the 3 calamities and 9 calamities, the heavenly Tao fell into silence, as if it was thinking about something. In the depths of the heavenly Tao, where the living beings could not see, where the main body of the heavenly Tao was, rays of Tao light flashed. P.S. The pain of an older youth. Chapter 8:15. The Way of the Heavens was deducing the feasibility of what Xianxia had said. Once he was sure that the 3 disasters and 9 disasters technique was effective, Xianxia would be able to become a sage. Rumble. After a few breaths, the Way of the Heavens had an answer and all the strange phenomena ended. Yes. A majestic voice resounded between heaven and earth. It was the heavenly axiom agreeing with Xianxia. They wanted to implement the 3 disasters and 9 disasters technique in the Eldritch world. Rumble. As soon as the Way of the Heavens had spoken, all the aura of calamity in the Eldritch world started to boil. They intertwined in the air and formed chains of calamity that shrouded all the living beings. From then on, all the cultivators except Jianghu would have to face the 3 disasters and 9 disasters technique. It was difficult to achieve the great Tao and the path to immortality. Longevity was even more difficult. The path to immortality was full of obstacles. If one was not careful, one's body and soul would be destroyed. If one took this path, one had to be careful. The path to immortality was as difficult as a mortal ascending to heaven. After the 3 disasters and 9 disasters technique was acknowledged by the Way of the Heavens, the aura of calamity that surged towards the eye of heavenly punishment increased by 100 or even 1,000 times. Very quickly, Xianxia's divine body became more solid and exuded an unparalleled sage aura. It was about to be born. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly, an inexplicable wave spread out from Tiandao's body and spread to every corner of the untainted land at an extremely fast speed. Sensing this fluctuation, all the great divines, including the sages, revealed puzzled expressions. This was because a strange thought arose in everyone's mind from this power. It was as if the Way of the Heavens was looking for something. Was there anything in the Eldritch world that the Way of the Heavens wanted? Also, what was the Way of the Heavens looking for? While they were confused, everyone was stunned. Could the Way of the Heavens be looking for the Hongmeng purple clouds? When they thought of this, everyone turned around and looked in the direction of the Tai-In holy city in the central divine lands. That was the place where ancestor Hongyun was suppressed. Other than ancestor Hongming's body, there was no other place in the world where Hongming's purple qi was most likely to exist. Everyone knew that the last place where the Hongmeng purple qi appeared was on ancestor Hongyun's body. Following the death of ancestor Hongyun, the Hongmeng purple clouds disappeared without a trace. However, everyone still suspected that the Hongmeng purple cloud was still in ancestor Hongyun's body. It was just that it was hidden so deeply that they could not discover it. In fact, it was just as the crowd had guessed. The Hongmeng immortal qi had never left ancestor Hongyun's body. Even after he had fallen, it was still there. However, it was a pity that the Hongmeng purple qi that no one could find was about to leave ancestor Hongyun under the power of the heavenly way. Without any warning, the power of the Way of the Heavens brushed past ancestor Hongyun's body. The Hongmeng purple qi left ancestor Hongyun's body and flew towards the sky where Xianxia was. Perhaps it felt that it was unfair for ancestor Hongyun to take away the Hongmeng purple qi. Therefore, when the Hongmeng purple qi left ancestor Hongyun's body, his true spirit also disappeared and escaped from the suppression of the Tai-In holy city. The power of the Way of the Heavens appeared out of nowhere, and disappeared along with ancestor Hongyun's innate indestructible true spirit. Its intention was obvious. To compensate ancestor Hongyun, it reincarnated with his innate indestructible true spirit. Feng Zichen saw all of this, but he did not stop it. Right now, Xianxia's priority was to become a sage. Feng Zichen would not do anything that might affect this matter. Furthermore, Feng Zichen would be able to end the karma of Xianxia taking away ancestor Hongyun's Hongmeng purple qi with his freedom. No matter what, this was a gain for him. Hongmeng purple qi. Seeing the appearance of the Hongmeng purple qi, the half-step to primordial chaos Jianghu became excited. Their eyes were filled with fervor and even their breathing became heavier. The Hongmeng purple qi was the foundation of becoming a sage. If they obtained it, with their strength, they would be able to become a sage in no time. Looking at the fervent expressions of the great masters, the Hongmeng purple qi was not obtained by the Way of the Heavens, but by Xianxia. Then, there was no doubt that these great experts would definitely swarm over and snatch the primordial violet qi. The temptation of becoming a sage was so great that it was almost impossible for anyone to resist it. Unless that person was like Feng Zichen, who was 100% sure that he could become a primordial chaos Jianghu. Only then could he resist such a great temptation. Becoming a saint did not only mean great power, but also the possibility of immortality. Although the great masters were strong, if the eldritch world was destroyed, or when the immeasurable calamity came, they would not be able to escape death, just like the other living beings. However, sages were different from primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. They were truly immortal. Even if the immeasurable calamity came, it would not be able to do anything to them. Even if the eldritch world was destroyed, it would not be able to hurt them. At most, they could reopen this world and create a new universe. They could just establish earth, fire, water, and wind. Without mentioning how the great masters were envious, the Hongmeng purple chi flew in the air for a while and came to the side of the eye of the heavenly tribulation. However, it was not in a hurry to enter the Thunderlock's body. Instead, like a naughty child, it circled around the Thunderlock a few times, as if it was confirming something. Then, it escaped from the Thunderlock's side. Like a fish, it swam around happily in the Thunder Sea. The Hongmeng purple chi was not being naughty. It was preparing to use the power of the Thunder Tribulations to wash away the ancestor Hongyun's chi in its body. After all, if it wanted to merge with the Thunderlock, it would bring ancestor Hongyun's chi into its body. As the Hongmeng purple chi swam in the Thunder Sea, the heavenly way was helping it to wash away the ancestor Hongyun's chi in its body. It had to ensure that the Hongmeng purple chi merged with the Thunderlock without any hidden dangers. Rumble! With the help of the heavenly way, the Hongmeng purple chi looked brand new. It was as if it had returned to its initial state. Other than the chi of Tao, there was nothing else. With a swoosh, the Hongmeng purple chi rose from the Thunder Sea and rushed into the eye of the heavenly tribulation at an extremely fast speed. It merged with the Thunderlock inside. Instantly, the Thunderlock felt that there was an additional purple chi in its consciousness. A boundless and mysterious aura exuded from its body, causing its true spirit to tremble non-stop. It was enlightened and its true spirit rose. The Hongmeng purple chi was indeed the foundation of the Tao. It had not merged with the Thunderlock yet, and it had already brought such great benefits to the Thunderlock. If it had really merged with the Thunderlock, what would it be like? Furthermore, the Thunderlock could feel a trace of the mysteries of the Hongmeng Tao from the Hongmeng purple chi. This chi could help him understand the mysteries of the Hongmeng Tao. If he had known about this earlier, Feng Zichen would not have waited until today. He would have already made his move on the Hongmeng purple chi. The power of Hongmeng was at the same level as the power of the Tao. It was also at the level of eternity. It was even more mysterious than Pangu's power. This was the key to Feng Zichen's future. Whether he could break the constraints of Pangu, walk his own path, and attain the eternal Tao was naturally very important to Feng Zichen. What Pangu wanted to achieve was the supreme realm of the great Tao. Feng Zichen was different from him. What he wanted to achieve was the origin of everything, the primordial chaos realm where there was a beginning and there was no end. The two were both at the eternal realm, but their performances were completely different and did not conflict. Otherwise, Feng Zichen and Pangu would have to compete for the great Tao in the future. It was different from the Khanate Tao. The supreme realm was really like a carrot and a hole. If one person achieved the great Tao, then the rest of the people who walked on the same path as him would have no chance of competing for the great Tao in this lifetime. Therefore, in the end, the existence of the same path was bound to have a life and death battle. The battle for the great Tao was so cruel. There was no good or bad, right or wrong. There was only success and failure. Without any hesitation, the Thunderlock opened his mind and allowed the Hongmeng purple chi to merge into his true spirit. Rumble! The Hongmeng purple chi entered his body as if a bridge had been built in the Thunderlock's true spirit. It allowed him to connect with the most mysterious place in the Hongmeng purple chi, and reach there through the bridge formed by the Hongmeng purple chi. Rumble! In a trance, endless power surged from the void and poured into the Thunderlock's body. In an instant, the illusory divine body of the Thunderlock was completely formed. At this moment, the eighth sage of the primitive world was born. Terrifying divine aura spread out and filled every corner of the primitive world. Everyone in the world couldn't help but bow down and worship him. At the same time, all kinds of strange phenomena appeared in the world. The Khanate Tao and the rules of heaven and earth vibrated together to congratulate the birth of the heavenly tribulation sage. That's right, the Thunderlock had become a sage. Becoming a sage was so fast. There was still a process to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, but not to become a sage. The power of the heavenly way could be completed in one breath. In a trance, the Thunderlock's true spirit left his body and came to a world formed by Tao. The Khanate Tao gathered here and all the mysteries appeared clearly in front of the Thunderlock. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that cultivating here for a day was more than 10,000 times faster than cultivating outside for 100 years. This was the space of the Heavenly Way, the most mysterious place in the primitive world. Under this space, the vast power of heaven and earth flowed. This was the origin of the sage's endless dharmic powers. The sage placed his true spirit here and could use the power of the Heavenly Way at will. Thus, he didn't have to worry about running out of dharmic powers. There were so many people who wanted to become a sage. Just the fact that they could cultivate in the space of the Heavenly Way was enough to make the outside world go crazy. Not to mention, there were all kinds of indescribable benefits to becoming a sage. Thunderlock looked at the space of the Heavenly Way for a while and saw someone beside him. It was the Tai Ching sage. Before the Thunderlock could speak, the Tai Ching sage spoke first. Poor Wei greets Taoist Thunderlock. I haven't congratulated you on becoming a sage. We have another comrade. After him, 5 more people appeared. They were the other 5 Heavenly Way sages, the primordial Lord of Heaven, the Prime of Heaven, the 2 sages of the West, and the Nuwa goddess. As for the Lady of Earth, she was an Earth Path sage and would not appear in the space of the Heavenly Way. After the 6 of them appeared and greeted Thunderlock, the Tai Ching sage said, Fellow Taoist Thunderlock, you have just become a sage. I think you still have many things to deal with. Poor Wei and the others won't disturb you anymore. It's not too late to talk about our matters when you're free. As he spoke, the shadows of the Tai Ching sage and the other sages disappeared in front of the Thunderlock. They left the space of the Heavenly Way. The space of the Heavenly Way was used by the sages. Any sage could come here. It was not surprising to meet the 3 pure ones here. Seeing the 3 pure ones leave, the Thunderlock did not hesitate and left the space of the Heavenly Way. Just as the Tai Ching sage had said, he, who had just become a sage, still had many things to deal with. The most important thing was to adapt to the sudden increase in power after he became a sage and familiarize himself with his authority. That's right, it was authority. The Thunderlock had achieved the Tao through the Tao of the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, the moment he became a sage, he naturally grasped the authority of the heavenly tribulation and had the authority to set up a tribulation in the primordial world. What did it mean to enforce justice on behalf of heaven? That was it. The authority that the Thunderlock grasped now was to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. The true spirit left the space of the Heavenly Way and returned to his body. Instantly, the Thunderlock felt that his body had changed drastically. Especially in terms of power, it had increased countless times. He could easily destroy the Great Thousand World with just a thought. It was not an illusion. He truly possessed such power. At the same time, the Thunderlock's vision began to increase infinitely. He could look down at the primordial world and the countless living beings from a high point of view. Even the River of Destiny and the River of Time and Space were under his feet. They rumbled and surged, but they could not shake him at all. That was the biggest difference between the sage and the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. The saints were the masters of the untainted world. Therefore their vision was high and mighty. They could look down on everything with a gaze that overlooked everything. On the other hand, the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was a transcendent. Therefore, he was free from the primordial chaos and looked at everything from a bystander's point of view. In the same realm, different positions created 2 different perspectives. It had to be said that watching the primordial world from 2 different perspectives at the same time was a very wonderful experience. In the primordial world, perhaps only Feng Zichen could have such an experience. He was both the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian and a sage. After comprehending the changes in his body, the Thunderlock turned his attention to his authority and great Tao. With a thought, a great Tao formed completely by lightning rose from the back of the Thunderlock. Chapter 8:16. The great path was purple and dazzling. Countless lightning runes flowed on it, and it was about 3,000 miles long. It was the symbol of the 3rd sky of Hunyuan realm. It was easy to distinguish the 12th sky of Hunyuan realm from the length of the great path manifestation. 1,000 miles was the 1st sky of Hunyuan realm, and 3,000 miles was the 3rd sky of Hunyuan realm. Lei Zhe was extraordinary. Once he broke through, he was already at the 3rd sky of Hunyuan realm. It showed how deep his accumulation was. With a thought, Lei Zhe seemed to have become one with heaven and earth. Countless calamity path precepts appeared in front of him. With a thought, he could turn them into endless calamities and descend upon the world. At the same time, everyone's fate appeared clearly in Lei Zhe's eyes. All kinds of calamities intertwined in the fate of all living beings, showing countless possibilities. At this time, Lei Zhe had a feeling that he could trigger the calamity power on all living beings with a thought, causing great calamity to befall them. It was not an illusion. Lei Zhe really had this ability. However, although he had the ability, he could not use it carelessly. Otherwise, it would be easy to mess up the order of heaven and earth, lose the fairness of the heavenly Tao, and cause great trouble. I am Lei Zhe, the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. Today, I have become a sage and will preach the great path to benefit all living beings. 10,000 years later, anyone who is fated can come to divine firmament to listen to my preaching, Lei Zhe suddenly said after experiencing all the changes after his breakthrough. That was right. After becoming a sage, it was customary to preach the great path to all living beings. It was the same when Nuwa became a sage. It was the same when the 3 pure ones became sages, the 2 sages of the West became sages, and Goddess Hutu became sages. Lei Zhe was no exception. At this time, even the heavenly Tao would not say anything. This was because this would undoubtedly deepen the sage's influence in the hearts of all living beings. The heavenly Tao should be supportive of this. Lei Zhe's preaching was a normal process. There was nothing wrong with it. All the sages had gone through this. Even when Lei Zhe was preaching, the saints would rush over to support him. At first, no one felt that there was something wrong. However, as they thought about it, they realized that something was wrong. There was nothing wrong with preaching, but it was not the right time. What was the current situation? The primordial world had just finished its transformation and regained its former glory. Innate energy filled the air, and many innate gods and innate living beings were born. Wasn't Lei Zhe's preaching now? No, Lei Zhe's preaching 10,000 years later for them? 10,000 years later, these Xiantian life forms and Xiantian fiend gods would all be born. Coincidentally, the Thunderlock was preaching at this time. When these living beings heard that the sage was preaching about the great Tao, they would definitely rush to the divine firmament to listen to the Tao. When that time came, Lei Zhe only needed to mention that he wanted to take in a few disciples after his preaching, and these innate gods and creatures would all fight to be his disciples. Good heavens! Isn't this a replica of Tao ancestor Hong Jun's Purple Cloud Palace lecture? There was no need for Xiao Chen to put in so much effort to find a disciple. He only needed to sit at home, and the outstanding talents of the great desolate Ian would take the initiative to deliver themselves to him. If Lei Zhe's plan really worked, he, who was already weak, would be able to gather many talents. If he was given more time to develop. It might be an exaggeration to say that he would become the second Xian sect, but it was not an exaggeration to say that he would be the second Jie sect. Thinking of this, everyone praised Lei Zhe's plan. Using the preaching as an opportunity to pick disciples and develop his power, no one could find fault with this plan. Even if they wanted to destroy it, they could not find a reason. After becoming a sage, he would preach to all living beings to show his power and virtue. If you went to cause trouble, not to mention whether you were in the right or not, your action alone would make you an enemy of him. This was not a wise move. But fortunately, Lei Zhe did not go to the extreme. He only preached 10,000 years later, not 100,000 years later. Although 10,000 years was a long time, there were many Xiantian life forms and Xiantian fiend gods in the primordial world. It was impossible for all of them to be born in 10,000 years. Only a small portion of them would be born, and more would still be in the process of being born. This way of eating was not too ugly, and everyone could tolerate it. Seeing that Lei Zhe had just become a sage, it was okay to give him a chance. But if Lei Zhe chose to preach 100,000 years later, it would be a little ugly. Not many Xiantian fiend gods and Xiantian life forms were born in 10,000 years. But in 100,000 years, even if not all of them were born, most of them would be born. If Lei Zhe took them all in one go, everyone would vomit blood. So they would not allow this to happen, even if it meant falling out with Lei Zhe. It was okay to take a step back, but not 2 or even a few steps back. This was a matter of principle. Lei Zhe's 10,000 years was just right. He did not touch anyone's bottom line, and he also achieved his goal. That's right, Leija's preaching was aimed at those Xiantian fiend gods and Xiantian life forms. Divine Firmament Palace was huge, and Divine Firmament was even bigger, but there were very few living beings in it. So, Leija planned to use this preaching opportunity to pick some talents for Divine Firmament Palace to expand its power. In the future, Divine Firmament Palace would preside over the operation of heavenly tribulations, monitor the eldritch world, and all living beings. Now, Leija's early planning was perfect. Leija looked around and saw that everyone was looking at him kindly. When they looked at him, they even smiled. Only then did Leija feel relieved. At this moment, he was sure that no one would disturb him during his preaching. 10,000 years was within their bottom line. Leija cupped his hands at everyone and withdrew his saint aura. He then took down the eye of heavenly punishment hanging in the sky and put it away. Then, he turned and left, returning to Divine Firmament Palace to prepare for his preaching. After he put away the eye of heavenly punishment, the oppressive aura in the air also disappeared. The oppressive aura came from the eye of heavenly punishment. It made the entire world feel oppressive. A supreme-grade Xiantian spiritual treasure like the Eye of Heavenly Punishment should not have such power. But now, it was no longer a supreme-grade Xiantian spiritual treasure or a Xiantian cardinal treasure. It was a very special treasure, a heavenly Tao saint artifact. When Leija disintegrated his Taoist body and merged it with the Eye of Heavenly Punishment, the supreme-grade Xiantian spiritual treasure began to transform. Then, Leija used this treasure as a bridge to connect with the heavenly Tao and gather the calamity aura in the world. Leija used the calamity aura to form a saint body, and the Eye of Heavenly Punishment also benefited and became stronger. P.S. Don't panic, brothers. Get your monthly tickets ready. From now on, I'll definitely be able to get 10,000 tickets in 24 hours. After I do that, you can use your monthly tickets as much as you want. Also, you must wear sunscreen when you go out. Men do the same. If your face is sunburned, it's uncomfortable and might be disfigured. You might even want to die. This is a lesson. Chapter 8:17. In the end, Luiz became a saint and attracted the power of the heavenly way. The eye of heavenly tribulation that he cultivated with his life also absorbed part of the power of the heavenly way and became even more extraordinary. It even fused with the Tao of heavenly tribulation vaguely. With so many benefits added together, the eye of heavenly tribulation underwent an unimaginable change and transformed into a heavenly way saint artifact. What was a heavenly way saint artifact? It was a Dharma treasure that could use the power of the heavenly way, like a saint among Dharma treasures. After becoming a heavenly way saint artifact, the level of the eye of heavenly tribulation didn't increase. It was still a supreme-grade connate spiritual treasure, but its power increased to an extremely terrifying level under the power of the heavenly way. It wasn't inferior to a connate cardinal treasure at all. It was even stronger than a connate cardinal treasure, second only to a heaven-opening cardinal treasure. Of course, this power that surpassed a connate cardinal treasure could only be used in the eldritch world. Outside of the eldritch world, the eye of heavenly tribulation would instantly revert to its original form and become a supreme-grade connate spiritual treasure again. That was enough. Luiz didn't need the eye of heavenly tribulation outside of the eldritch world. After returning to the Purple Cloud Palace, Luiz first summoned his 9 disciples, who were the Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven. Under the nurturing of the 9th heaven, the connate divine fetus that gave birth to the Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven was reborn. Back then, after Xianxia killed the world devastator Taoist, he intercepted part of the Thunder Lord's origin and injected it into the connate divine fetus that gave birth to the Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven. After absorbing the world devastator Taoist's origin, the karma of the Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven disappeared and he was born again soon after. The Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven was already extraordinary, and after being nurtured by the 9th heaven's origin, he became even more extraordinary. After being born, each of them was a top-tier connate god fiend with the cultivation of Tao Lord of Tai. With the same origin and the grace of being reborn, the Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven became Luiz's disciple. Luiz was happy to have 9 top-tier connate god fiends as his disciples, so he didn't reject them. This was his destined disciple, and he could not reject it even if he wanted to, unless the Thunderlock was willing to give up on him. After all, to Luiz, Xianxia was just an outsider. Thunder Lord of the 9th heaven was his real son. If Feng Zichen didn't accept them as his disciples and chased them out, Leisha might cause some trouble. At that time, Feng Zichen would be in big trouble. Since that was the case, he might as well take them in as disciples. Anyway, to Feng Zichen, taking the Thunder Lord of the Ninth Heaven as his disciple would only bring him benefits and no harm. After taking in the 9 gods as his disciples, Leisha passed down his skills to them and named them as the 9 Lords of Heaven. Each of them was in charge of a heaven. Their 9 brothers also worked hard. After being born for less than 10 million years, they transcended the long river of fate and cultivated to the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests. There was nothing surprising about this. Innate gods were favored by the heavenly Tao, and even more so for the top innate gods. As for the top innate gods, if they were formed from the innate lightning origin, they would be even more impressive. Even the heavenly Tao would treat them as half a sun. Lightning was the heavenly Tao's anger, and also its weapon. It was also its method of ruling over the wilderness. As such, the heavenly Tao had always been biased towards the innate gods of the lightning lineage. As half a son of the heavenly Tao, it was not surprising that the Thunder Lord of the Ninth Heaven could cultivate to the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests in 10 million years. Since he was half a son of the heavenly Tao, it was not surprising that he could cultivate to the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests. But if he couldn't, that would be strange. Perhaps the world devastator Taoist's actions all those years ago had left an indelible trauma in the hearts of the 9 brothers. All in all, the 9 brothers lacked a sense of security and always thought that they were not strong enough. Usually, other than taking care of business, they would cultivate in seclusion. They did not know how to go out and explore. Instead, they stayed in the divine firmament 9 heavens all day long. They were a bunch of shut-ins. The 9 brothers did not want to move. Lei Zhe tried to persuade them, but to no avail. He gave up and let them be. Anyway, it was not a bad thing to focus on cultivation. On the contrary, the 9 brothers did not show themselves. They could be Lei Zhe's trump card. 9 Daluo Taoist priests, and 9 Daluo Taoist priests with the same origin. Even if an ordinary sage-to-be expert came, they would not be able to defeat them. They were indeed a huge trump card. However, as Lei Zhe became a saint, this trump card lost its use. On the contrary, Lei Zhe had to take the initiative to expose them. He did not have any other motive. He just wanted the world to see how he trained his disciples. There were a total of 9 disciples, and all of them were Daluo Taoist priests. Other than Luai's, no other sage could have 9 Dao sovereigns in one sect. This method of teaching disciples was definitely reliable. Of course, Goddess Nuwa did not count. To be honest, Feng Zichen was a disciple of the palace of Empress Hua. Even if other saints had thousands of disciples, Goddess Nuwa only had one disciple, Feng Zichen. Even if all the third-generation disciples of the Xian sect were added up, they would not be able to compare to Feng Zichen. To be able to teach a disciple like Feng Zichen, even if he was only slightly inferior, it was enough for Goddess Nuwa to be proud. In the untainted land, no matter who it was, no one dared to show off in front of Goddess Nuwa when it came to teaching disciples. Because they really could not compare to him. Feng Zichen's achievements were too dazzling. Not to mention their disciples, even they themselves, and even their master, Dao ancestor Hong Jun, could not be compared to him. With an acquired body, he was at the top of the untainted land and was as respected as the saints. Even the proud heavenly lord of the origin, who had a grudge against Feng Zichen, had to admit that he was not as good as him. Feng Zichen, the pride of the palace of Empress Hua. If you asked if Goddess Nuwa had taught Feng Zichen, she definitely had. The great magic of Tiangang 36 transformations that Feng Zichen had learned was taught by Goddess Nuwa. Lei Zhe's purpose of bringing Thunder Lord of the Ninth Heaven to the surface was to advertise. Next, Lei Zhe was going to open the mountain gate and recruit disciples. Lei Zhe wanted to bring Thunder Lord of the Ninth Heaven out for a walk so that everyone could see how he taught his disciples. Lei Zhe was not going to make empty promises. He was going to speak with facts. 9 Taoist priests in a sect, and all 9 of his disciples were outstanding. This method could be said to be the best among the saints, and other saints could not compare to it. When everyone saw this scene, it was needless to say who should be the master. Lei Zhe was probably the first to advertise in the untainted land. The world had also changed. In the beginning of ancient times, when the 3 pure ones had just become saints, A large number of innate gods and demons had come to worship them as masters. They had to be picky about who they did not like and who they could not accept. In short, they despised them. At that time, they really did not expect that one day, they would end up taking the initiative to recruit disciples. Times had really changed. Now, the 5 great divine lands had to suppress the chaos demon god. For this reason, the saints had to maintain restraint and not fight. They could not fight, so when there was a conflict, they naturally had to let their subordinates solve it. The demon race had demon gods, the wizard race had great wizards, and the human race had Taoist priests. The three pure ones had Xianxia, Duobao, and Xuandu. The 2 saints of the West had nothing. The difference was huge. It was as big as the difference between the author and Chen Dong. The difference was huge. The Golden Alliance has won, but I don't have a leader. When one's power was inferior to others, they had to develop. First, they had to work hard to improve the strength of their disciples. Second, they had to recruit new disciples. And that was what everyone thought. But there were only a few innate gods and demons. For this reason, everyone could only use their own means to fight for them. The disciples who used to be disdainful were now fighting for them. This was why the world changed as usual. In the divine firmament palace, the thunder army of the 9 heavens rushed over and congratulated Lei Zhe. "Greetings, master. I haven't congratulated you on becoming a saint. From now on, you'll be limitless." Lei Zhe calmly accepted their greetings and said, "You know that I've become a saint and will preach the great Tao in the divine firmament palace. At that time, not only will the fated ones come, but there will also be many great mediums coming to congratulate me. The others are the other saints. They will also come to greet me. Those saints are my good friends. Naturally, I'll receive them personally. But what about those great mediums who come to congratulate me and watch the ceremony?" "You're right. The divine firmament palace is quiet. I don't even have a child. Therefore, you 9 brothers will be in charge of receiving those great mediums. You'll also be in charge of the preaching." At this point, Lei Zhe added, "Remember to keep your spirits up. Do not embarrass my divine firmament palace in front of these fellow Taoists. Otherwise, I won't let you off so easily." Lei Zhe didn't have a child. Even if he did, he wouldn't let a child come out to receive them. This time, the Thunder Lord of the 9 heavens had to come out to receive them. In this way, Lei Zhe could naturally introduce them to the various powerful beings and sages. He didn't want them to be rude because this was the first time they appeared in the Eldritch Land. He wanted to leave a good impression on everyone. The Thunder Lord of the 9 heavens performance would determine the effect of Lei Zhe's advertisement. He couldn't be underestimated. Details, these were all details. Details determine success or failure. "Yes, master. We'll do it well. We won't embarrass you." Seeing how serious Lei Zhe was, the 9 brothers didn't dare to delay and immediately promised. Seeing that the 9 brothers were serious, Lei Zhe nodded in satisfaction and said, "I still have things to do. You can go ahead." After saying that, Lei Zhe's figure disappeared from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already at the border of the heavenly realm and the human realm. Originally, there was a vast sea of laws here. It separated the heavenly realm and the human realm, cutting off the connection between heaven and earth. But with the changes in the Eldritch Land, the vast sea of laws was also destroyed. This also meant that the heaven and earth isolation had completely lost its effect. Those experts could now freely travel between the heavenly realm and the human realm. Of course, Lei Zhe didn't come here to repair the sea of laws and restore the heaven and earth isolation. Because based on the current situation of the Eldritch Land, it was completely unnecessary. P.S. 3,000, 7,000 more to go. Chapter 8:18. The Golden Age had arrived. Now that the heavenly passage was going against the general trend, it was destined to not have a good ending. Therefore, Luais came here for another purpose. He wanted to make some arrangements here to block the path. Even if he opened the door and preached to the countless people, not everyone was qualified to come and listen. Only those who were fated could come. What was a fated person? First of all, one must have a certain level of strength. Because Luai's was short of people now, the requirements could be lowered. Not to mention Daluo Jingxian, at least one had to be a golden immortal who had achieved longevity. In the past, if one wanted to listen to the Tao ancestors preaching, one had to cross the boundless chaos outside the sky first. The chaos outside the sky was very dangerous. The chaos was surging and boiling. Without the cultivation of Daluo Taoist priests, one would die if one went in. Even Daluo Taoist priests would encounter danger in the chaos outside the sky without the protection of top innate spiritual treasures. The Tao ancestor was looking for fated people to preach. Although he didn't make any requests, just the fact that he wanted to cross the chaos beyond the heavens was enough to exclude all cultivators below the zenith heaven holy lord of the primordial world. Even if Luai's current strength was not as good as the Tao ancestor at that time, there was not much difference. If he wanted, he could preach in the chaos outside the sky like the Tao ancestor, but there was no need for that. He wanted to open the door for all living beings, so he could not set the standard so high. It was enough to have the cultivation of a golden immortal. However, Hongjun Tao ancestor had the chaos outside the sky to select Daluo Taoist priests for him, but Luai's did not. With the disappearance of the Sea of Laws, there was no longer any obstruction in the heaven realm and the human realm. Logically speaking, not to mention immortals, even ordinary young spirit earth immortals could fly to the heaven realm as long as they were not afraid of taking too long. Therefore, if Luai's did not make some arrangements here, when he preached, there might not be any young spirit earth immortals, but there would definitely be a lot of heaven immortals and mystic immortals. If there were too many people at that time, the divine firmament palace might not be able to handle it. It would be better to make some arrangements to keep all immortals below the golden immortal realm out. With that thought in mind, Leija's mind flickered. Boundless lightning, fire, and wind appeared, spanning across the border between the heavenly realm and the human realm. He formed a hand seal and pointed at the astral wind. The astral wind suddenly elongated and thickened until it was as long as the sky. It was about 30,000 miles thick. This gale was capable of destroying the soul and corroding the bones, and it was over 10,000 times stronger than an ordinary gale. Without a cultivation at the heavenly immortal realm, one would be instantly minced into powder and obliterated in body and soul. The celestial immortals here referred to the celestial immortals who cultivated the innate Tao and had a deep foundation, not the celestial immortals who cultivated the postnatal Tao and had only a high realm but no powerful strength. This time, Luai's only planned to teach the Tao to those who cultivated the connate Tao. As for those who cultivated the postnatal Tao, he didn't even consider them and automatically ignored them. Based on the current situation, those who still chose to cultivate the acquired Tao probably didn't have much aptitude or confidence in themselves. If not, why didn't he cultivate the connate Tao? Even if such a cultivator came to the divine firmament palace, he probably wouldn't understand what Luai's was talking about because he was talking about the connate Tao. Luai's waved his hand again, and a layer of thunderfire appeared on top of the astral wind. It was also 30,000 miles high. The thunderfire and the fire were both spiritual thunders and spiritual fires born of nature. Their power was extraordinary, and ordinary mystic immortals couldn't even get close to them. Otherwise, they would be burned to ashes. After the thunderfire, Luai's used his dermic power to lay a layer of meteorites on top of the thunderfire. Each of the meteors carried a power that was comparable to the full-powered strike of a gold immortal. If they hit a person, they would be able to severely injure any gold immortal. With this layer of thunderfire and astral wind, ordinary golden immortals couldn't pass through and come to the celestial realm. Only the best among them could do this. From now on, with Luai's arrangement, the celestial realm and the mortal realm would slowly be separated. If one wanted to freely travel between the celestial realm and the mortal realm, one must have the cultivation of Tai Jingxian. The celestial realm was supposed to be high and mighty. It should be the residence of immortals, separated from mortals. As for sky immortals and mystic immortals, they couldn't even live forever. Naturally, they weren't immortals. Looking at his masterpiece, Luai's nodded in satisfaction and returned to the Empyrean. However, just as he was about to leave the divine firmament palace, Luai's seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly waved his hand and laid down a vast thunderfield on the only way to the Empyrean. The power of the thunderfield had nothing to do with the intruder's cultivation. It was only related to their karma. The more karma one had, the more powerful the thunderbolts one would face after entering the thunderfield. The Empyrean was the holy land of the Tao of lightning. It was a place where the righteous Tao existed. It would never allow any filthy power to exist. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. The day of Luai's sermon was coming soon. During this time, there were a lot of new living beings in the world. For example, there were all kinds of connate life forms born of connate chi, such as the Thunder Spirit Clan, the Fire Spirit Clan, the Cloud Spirit Clan, and so on. In fact, these races weren't considered new. They'd existed in the Eldritch Wilderness in the past. But because of the constant wars between the races, many races had disappeared in history. These new connate life forms were like that. They'd been extinct in the Eldritch Wilderness for a long time, but with the recovery of the world, connate chi became rich again and gave birth to them again. The species in the Eldritch Wilderness had always been diverse. No race would be completely extinct, because the marks of all living beings were stored in the tunnel. If a race was completely extinct, the tunnel would find an opportunity to give birth to it again with the marks in its body. This was also the reason why so many races had suddenly disappeared and reappeared in the Eldritch Wilderness. They might not have lived in seclusion. They might have been exterminated. But the changes in the world gave birth to them again. When these living beings were just born, they were ignorant and didn't know anything. After the tunnel gave birth to them, it didn't care about them anymore and left them to their own devices. This was the tunnel. It was only responsible for giving birth to all living beings. As for their fates after birth, it didn't care at all. The tunnel didn't care, but the heavenly Tao did. Before these connate life forms could understand for long, the heavenly Tao gave them the inheritance of the heavenly Tao, allowing them to understand their origins, their environment, and the current situation of the world. At the same time, it also gave them some basic cultivation techniques and corresponding divine abilities to protect themselves. The Eldritch Wilderness? The first year of the three realms? After receiving the inheritance, the connate life forms understood their situation. They were now in the Eldritch Wilderness, the era of the three realms. That's right, the era of the three realms. The War of the Gods had ended, and the Eldritch Wilderness was reborn. A brand new chapter in history was opened again, from the Age of the Gods to the three realms. Correspondingly, all of the historical records were pushed forward by a step. For example, the primordial age was now called the Age of Creation, or the Age of Gods and Demons. The reason why it was called Gods and Demons was because in any era, those who walked the Eldritch Wilderness were all connate gods and demons. The era of the three ancient races became the primordial age. The primordial age of liches and demons became the primordial age. The era that had just passed was called the primordial age, the Age of the Gods. Now, although this era had just begun, its name had already been decided. It was called the Age of the Three Realms. What was the three realms? It was the three realms of heaven, man, and earth. The heaven realm was the 36 heavens, standing in the sky of the Eldritch Wilderness. The mortal realm was the Eldritch Wilderness, with the 5 divine lands as the core and countless islands as support. It also included the boundless sea, located in the middle of the Eldritch Wilderness. The Earth Realm was the underworld, located at the bottom of the Eldritch Wilderness. The Eldritch Wilderness now had 3 worlds. When everyone saw this scene, they thought about it and directly called this world the Three Realms to save trouble. As for the name of the Three Realms, the saints and many great divine abilities discussed it for a long time. Not long after Luais became a saint, Tao ancestor Hongjun called everyone to the Purple Cloud Palace. After all, the birth of the 8th saint in the Eldritch Wilderness was a major event, representing the prosperity of the Eldritch Wilderness. As the Lord of the Eldritch Wilderness, it was impossible for Tao ancestor Hongjun not to appear. In the Purple Cloud Palace, Tao ancestor Hongjun congratulated Luais and then encouraged him. Finally, it was the usual, and also everyone's favorite segment of the Tao ancestors' Tao preaching. Every time Tao ancestor Hongjun called people to the Purple Cloud Palace, he would not let them come for nothing. At the end, he would preach the Tao, as if this way, everyone would not be at a disadvantage. The Tao ancestor also had a cute side. After the preaching segment, everyone chatted for a while. For some reason, they talked about the current Eldritch Wilderness. After chatting for a while, they decided on the name of the 3 realms. Heaven, earth, and man were the 3 talents of the connate realm. What a nice name. Then, it was difficult for everyone to calculate the date of the 3 realms. Some flatterers suggested that they start counting from the day of Tao ancestor Hongjun's birth. However, as soon as it was proposed, Tao ancestor Hongjun rejected it. He was already in a state of retirement, so there was no need to fight for this title. After that, someone suggested that they start counting from the birthdays of the three pure ones. After all, the Pangu was orthodox and had a righteous name. As soon as this suggestion was made, it was rejected by someone again. The three pure ones were Orthodox Pangu, so was Goddess Hutu, Great Emperor Ziwei, and Great Emperor Gaochen. If they started counting from the birthdays of the three pure ones, it would be difficult for people to accept it. After the three pure ones, someone suggested that they start counting from the day the human race was born. After all, the human race was the protagonist of the world, so they should enjoy this honor. As soon as this suggestion was made, someone said that if the human race could do it, so could Goddess Nuwa. After all, the human race was created by Goddess Nuwa. Then, someone suggested that they start counting from the day Goddess Hutu transformed into reincarnation. P.S. I'm still 4,000 short. I have to wait until dawn. Damn it. I'll go on a blind date later. Wish me success. Chapter 8:19. The Lady of Earth transformed into reincarnation, and her merit was boundless. Some people also suggested counting from the day Fengzichen set up the World Tree. The appearance of the World Tree marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Eldritch world. In short, there were all kinds of suggestions, and they all had sufficient reasons. Everyone was arguing over this. At a certain moment, everyone finally reached a consensus. They would count from the day Great Emperor Ziwei ascended to the boundless starry sky. When Great Emperor Ziwei first appeared in the world, he appeared in front of the world as a savior. But this time, not only did he restore the already broken and boundless starry sky, he even made it undergo a transformation and take a step closer. In terms of merit, Great Emperor Ziwei was the most outstanding in the Eldritch world. No one could compare to him. It was most appropriate to count the day he ascended to the boundless starry sky as the beginning of the era of the three realms. In the face of everyone's suggestions, Fengzichen wanted to reject them. The status of Great Emperor Ziwei had already reached the peak of the Eldritch world. It was not inferior to the status of Dao Ancestor. He no longer needed other honors to improve his status. He should give this honor to someone else. However, in the end, Fengzichen accepted it. This was because he realized that it was not suitable for him to give this honor to anyone. If he gave it to Goddess Nuwa, he would offend Goddess Hutu. If he gave it to Goddess Hutu, he would offend Nuwa. If he gave it to Gaochen, he would be giving it to himself. This would seem a little pretentious. Therefore, Fengzichen thought about it and decided to show the demeanor of a great senior and give it to a special living being. After the establishment of the three realms, the first living being born would also be the first innate god-fiend. Anything that was related to being first would become extraordinary. The heavenly secrets showed that after the establishment of the three realms, the first living being born would be a top-notch innate god-fiend. This living being was born with a wisp of the three realms' destiny. It gathered the fortune of heaven, earth, and people in its body. It could be said to be the son of the era. In the future, it was destined to become a great cultivator. It was even possible for it to reach the primordial chaos realm. For details, he could refer to the first connate life form of the primordial world, Dao Ancestor Hongjun, and the first postnatal life form of the primordial world, Fengzichen. Both of them were number one and had achieved unimaginable achievements. That living being was born from the karmic luck of the three dimensions. Even though it couldn't compare to these two great figures, it still couldn't be underestimated. After all, the era of the three dimensions was the only era since the primeval times had been split open, and it contained unimaginable karmic luck and fortune. This living being was the child of karmic luck, and being born in this era was already bound to be extraordinary. Therefore, Fengzichen decided to form a good relationship with him and let him have this special honor. The day he was born would be the first year of the three realms, the beginning of the three realms era. It was a very good idea, a very good reason, and it even created the image of a reliable senior. When that living being succeeded in its cultivation and understood the cause and effect, it would definitely be very grateful to Fengzichen. This special honor wasn't just a special honor, it represented a strand of the karmic luck of the three dimensions. If there were no real benefits, why would everyone fight for this? If that living being received benefits from Fengzichen, it would form a karmic relationship with him, and he would have to pay it back in the future. Fengzichen's calculations were very precise. and he definitely wouldn't suffer any losses. Unfortunately, Feng Zichen's idea was very good, but once he said his suggestion, it was rejected by everyone. He was just a newborn god fiend. Even if his aptitude was extraordinary, how could he be compared to everyone present? If they gave that special honor to him, where would their dignity go? The reason was very simple. It was the above sentence that dispelled all of Feng Zichen's plans, and he had no choice but to accept this special honor. When his plan failed, Feng Zichen sighed slightly and didn't take it too seriously. He just felt a little regretful. Little did he know that Feng Zichen's lack of persistence made him regret what happened next. After some calculations, Feng Zichen realized that 100 years and 30 days later would be the 10,000th anniversary of his unsealing of Zhouxing. No one objected and they all nodded in agreement. Then, Feng Zichen set this day as the first day of the 3 dimensions, the beginning of the 3 dimensions era. In the blink of an eye that day came. On this day, everyone worked together to summon the long river of time and space, and set up a huge stone tablet in it. The words, first year of the 3 dimensions, were written on it, and it was fixed on this time and space node. At this point, the Eldritch world had entered the 3 dimensions era. At this point, the matter was considered to be over. Everyone should leave the Purple Cloud Palace and return home. But at this moment, an inexplicable throbbing suddenly came from the Eldritch world, attracting everyone's attention. Worried that there would be a problem with the Eldritch world, everyone didn't dare to hesitate. They immediately released their divine senses and crossed the endless chaotic void, looking towards the Eldritch world. Then, everyone saw a strange scene. On the Eldritch world, regardless of whether it was the connate myriad Dao or the postnatal myriad Dao, all of them appeared. They jumped happily between heaven and earth, as if they were extremely excited. After silently calculating, everyone knew the origin of this phenomenon. It turned out that the first connate god fiend of the 3 dimensions was about to be born. This phenomenon was to celebrate his imminent birth. The old doubts were resolved, but new doubts appeared in everyone's minds. What was the origin of that connate god fiend? Why could it cause such a commotion? TSK, the commotion caused by this birth is really not small. I wonder if there was such a phenomenon when Taoist 3 Pure Ones was born? Feng Zichen turned his head and asked the 3 Pure Ones after looking at the phenomenon in the heavenly Tao. The Grand Pure One thought for a moment and replied, "It should be about the same. Even if the phenomenon of this connate god fiend's birth can't be compared to the 3 of us, it's not much worse." Hiss, the moment the Grand Pure One said that, everyone gasped in shock. The phenomenon when a connate god fiend was born could probably represent his talent and achievements. The phenomenon when this connate god fiend was born could actually catch up to the 3 Pure Ones. Didn't that mean that his future achievements were second only to the 3 Pure Ones? Although everyone had already overestimated the new connate god fiend, they still did not expect him to be so talented. Curious, Saint Jianghu said, "Let's not stay here and watch. Let's go and take a look ourselves. How extraordinary is that connate god fiend to be able to produce such a phenomenon?" After saying that, Saint Jianghu took the lead and walked towards the primordial world without waiting for anyone to answer. Seeing that, everyone hurriedly said, "Let's go, let's go." Looking at the figure of Saint Jianghu leaving first, the Grand Pure One shook his head and smiled. Suddenly, he took out the connate cardinal treasure, the Taiji painting, and turned into a white jade bridge that reached the sky. He carried everyone and rushed towards the primordial world at an extremely fast speed. "Fellow Taoists, let's go." When everyone surpassed Saint Jianghu, the Grand Pure One's voice sounded in everyone's eyes. Fast, very fast, very fast. As expected of the heaven-opening cardinal treasure, the speed of the Taiji painting was actually 30% faster than Feng Zichen's speed. Seeing that he had been surpassed, Saint Jianghu was not angry. Instead, he laughed and turned into a ray of light. He landed on the white jade bridge and rushed to the primordial world with everyone. At that moment, the 8 saints of the primordial world and many great mystical abilities stepped on the white jade bridge and rushed to the primordial world. Such a scene was enough to be recorded in the annals of the primordial world and make future generations have endless imagination. Looking at the smiles on everyone's faces, those who did not know would think that their relationship was very similar. It was the long-awaited peace. Silently, the heavenly Tao appeared and froze this scene, as if it had turned into eternity. As I wrote, I suddenly realized that this paragraph had the flavor of a grand finale. Of course, I have no intention of ending it. If I end it here, you will probably tear me apart. I'm just lamenting. Although the birthplace of the Khanate god fiend was very mysterious, with everyone working together, who in the primordial world could hide from them? Therefore, it was easy for everyone to find the place where the Khanate god fiend was born. Yes, it was indeed very special. It was so special that after everyone arrived, the smiles on their faces disappeared. They walked forward with an extremely solemn expression. There was a faint gray fog here. There was chaos chi rising and chaos baneful chi surging. There were piles of gravel on the ground. There was divine power circulating on the gravel. Although it was very faint, it had a supreme charm. At the same time, an extremely distant aura naturally filled the place. Indeed, this place was very ancient. It could be traced back to the beginning of the world. This was the ruins of the original Mount Buzhou, where the backbone of the great god Pangu was. This was the birthplace of the #1 Khanate god fiend in the 3 realms. Mount Buzhou was such a special place. It was the original heavenly pillar of the primordial world and the supreme divine mountain that suppressed the chaos demon god. His ruins were filled with the aura of destruction and the resentment of the chaos demon god. Logically speaking, there should be no living creatures born here. However, an Khanate god fiend was born here. Then this living being must be extremely special. With indescribable feelings, everyone came to the deepest part of the Mount Buzhou ruins and saw the Khanate god fiend that was about to be born. It was an Khanate god fiend. It was 36 feet and 5 inches tall and 24 feet in circumference. 36 feet and 5 inches tall, according to the 365 degrees of the heavenly cycle. 24 feet in circumference, according to the 24 chi of the political calendar. There were 9 orifices and 8 holes on it, according to the 9 palaces and 8 trigrams. There was nothing wrong with this. Most Khanate god fiends looked like this. Everyone was knowledgeable and had naturally seen the appearance of other Khanate god fiends. Naturally, they were not surprised. However, when they looked down and saw the scene below the Khanate god fiend, everyone's expression changed. Below the Khanate god fiend was a huge blood pool. This was nothing. The key was the blood at the bottom of the blood pool. Everyone recognized that it was their blood, as well as the blood of the chaos demon gods. The blood in the blood pool was the blood of Feng Zichen, the 3 pure ones, goddess Hutu, great emperor Ziwei, Nuwa, and the 2 sages of the west. These were the blood of the orthodox Pangu and the saints. Their blood only occupied half of the blood pool. The remaining blood emitted a faint divine light, with the great Tao rules looming and chaotic aura lingering on it. It was the blood of the chaos demon gods. Where did the blood come from? Everyone remembered that at the end of the gods' investiture tribulation, they had a great battle with the 7 chaos demon gods. Although they won that battle and successfully sealed the chaos demon gods in the 5 divine lands and the heaven realm. However, how could they not pay a price for the battle with the chaos demon gods? They were all injured and lost a lot of blood. The blood in the blood pool was left by them at that time. For some reason, the blood shed by the crowd and the chaos fiend god gathered together and turned into a blood pool. Then, it came to the relic of Mount Buzhou and gave birth to a Khanate divine fetus. Listen to this. What a coincidence. If no one was secretly playing tricks, Feng Zichen could twist Saint Xuanti's head off and kick it like a ball. On the side, Saint Xuanti touched his neck subconsciously, then looked around in confusion and said, "Fellow Taoists, I'm afraid this Khanate god fiend is extraordinary." It was more than extraordinary. He was much more extraordinary than everyone had imagined. When they saw this Khanate god fiend being born in Mount Buzhou, everyone had tried their best to imagine how extraordinary he was. However, they still underestimated him. If this identity could really be born, it would not be weaker than Feng Zichen. The first Khanate god fiend in the 3 realms was already extraordinary enough. However, he was also an Khanate god fiend born from the fusion of the blood of a saint and the blood of a chaos demon god. That was the most special thing about him. What were Feng Zichen and the others? They were Pangu. After this Khanate god fiend obtained their blood, he also obtained the blood of the chaos demon god. It was equivalent to having 2 bloodlines in one body. What was the Son of Destiny? This was it. Although the untainted world was created by Pangu, the chaos demon gods also contributed a lot. Their origin was the foundation of the untainted world. Therefore, the descendants of the Chaos Demon gods were considered half-orthodox in the untainted world. This connate god-fiend had two bloodlines in one body, which was equivalent to having two orthodox bloodlines at the same time. His status was worthy of being called indescribably noble, not inferior to that of the true Pangu lineage. He was the first in history. This connate god-fiend was the first to have two bloodlines in one body. He was too extraordinary. If he could be born, it would not be difficult for him to reach the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in the future. However, it was precisely because he was too extraordinary, so extraordinary that he was somewhat heaven-defying. As such, he attracted a calamity, and whether or not he could be born in the future also became complicated and confusing. What tribulation? Naturally, it was the human tribulation. Because of this connate god-fiend's extraordinariness, it attracted the attention of Feng Zichen and the others, causing them to come here. And this was the human tribulation of this connate god-fiend. Some people did not want to see the birth of this connate god-fiend. It was not because they were afraid of his talent, but because they did not like his background. The Pangu divine system was the Pangu divine system, and the Chaos demon god system was the Chaos demon god system. The two were clearly separated. How could they be mixed together? P.S. Today's 10,000 words are complete. There is no discount at all. Please give me monthly votes and tips. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.